101, slow, B2. It has become second nature now to exist any dungeons ready for a fight, but there wasn't anything waiting for me, thankfully. Holding the small sphere carefully in my hand, I traveled back home. I could see people coming and going as I approached. Not a whole lot. We didn't suddenly transform into a market or anything like that, but definitely more than what was typical just a couple weeks ago, hell, even a couple days ago. People were either coming for help with certain things or coming back with scouting reports. I knew of the plan, but it's still a little weird to see it happen. Anyway, I made my way back home, greeting folks as I did so, and sought out my father, who was thankfully home at the moment. I was only gone for an hour or two, but things are happening quickly around these days. Especially since we are all doing everything that we could to get stronger in the short term. It looks like a marble. We used to play with those back in the day, you know. My dad commented that as she stared at the sphere in his hands. He knew to be careful with it, especially since I didn't want to find out what happened if the person who didn't earn the great act were to crush the sphere instead. Perhaps nothing, since if I earned it, maybe I could do whatever I wanted with it. But there is also a chance if someone else did it, they would be denied service or worse, killed. That was considering how serious Acolyte Aranda got when I barely hinted at not getting my due for the great act. It could have all been an act, of course, but it really didn't feel that way in the moment. He was genuinely pissed off, and maybe if I pushed too hard, I wouldn't be standing here today. I won't forget my unconscious reaction to his pressure, not for a while. Thinking about it now, I couldn't help but chuckle as the situation reminded me of that trend on social media a while back where people were visiting places and asking, who's releasing their pressure in Shibuya? Or something stupid like that. What are you laughing about? Nothing, something stupid. Nothing or something, which one is it? Nothing. Dad mumbled something akin to kids these days under his breath as he continued inspecting the sphere a while longer, only giving it back to me after he looked over it thoroughly. Well, it looks fine to me, and there's no sense it waiting. Who knows how long it will take to get back to a point where everything is guaranteed safe and sound. Shoot, it wasn't even like that before all of this happened. I say go for it. A stronger you is a stronger us. And Mom, she's not here right now. Went with the old man to go provide some medical attention and food to some kids or something like that. Don't worry, I'll let them know you're all right. That was good enough for me. He then looked at me expectantly. There wasn't really a wide grin or stars shining in his eyes or anything like that, but I knew him. The man was excited. We talked about it a bit already. Exactly what crushing the sphere would do. The obvious answer was that it was transport me somewhere, likely back into the dungeon where my training would begin. Or maybe it would put me to sleep, and I would have to endure some type of mental training that would display its effects in some sort of painful ritual after I woke up. It was clear we let our thoughts run about it, but who could blame us? We both, well, more so him than I, grew up in a place that held my grandpa and his father in it. As serious as he liked to act, Grandpa was a damn nerd, and it obviously corrupted all of us. Now Dad did express the type of worry a father should regarding crushing this sphere, but the decision was made so to keep worrying about it would just make it worse. A little excitement wouldn't hurt. Especially when the alternative is to think about the more dire things surrounding this family at the moment. Anyway, I looked at him, smiled with a bit of excitement of my own, then crushed the sphere. At the first, nothing happened, and our smiles began to turn into the confusion. Then my vision swam, faded to black. A mass of colors then entered and flashed all around me before fading to black one more. I felt the feeling of gasping of air unconsciously leave my throat, and when my vision cleared, I found myself with my hands and knees shakingly planted on a dark, rocky ground. What the fuck was that? I coughed dryly as I looked up to take in my surroundings and found that I was in forest of sorts. A dark one, slightly wet, and fairly dense. There was moonlight shining down from the night sky somewhere up above, but that was only an assumption as I didn't see a moon above me. Of course, that didn't mean it was bright. The area around me was still dark, but there was just enough light for me to observe the trees and plants. They looked different. More curls than straight lines, more colors instead of a rich green, shapes that appeared natural yet twisted. I was nowhere near being a botanist, and I barely paid attention in any classes that would have been relevant at the moment. Not that there were many. But the point is, I don't think this was any forest on Earth. At least not any that I was familiar with. The realization of that thought sinks in deeper than I realized it would. Off Earth just like that? No, that didn't make any sense. Perhaps this was a secret area of the dungeon. Standing to my feet, I let the thoughts about where I was and the feasibility of something like that being true swirl in my mind for a moment longer before pushing it all aside. The hell am I doing? Woke up in a strange forest, and instead of checking for enemies, I was thinking about things that wouldn't help me immediately. Focus, Freddy. I quickly knelt down and grabbed my spear, which was laying to the side next to me, before taking a proper look around me this time. I was in some sort of clearing, a small circle with me as the center where no trees or bushes grew. Slow. My head snapped to the voice coming from the left where I found a man. One similar in appearance to Acolyte Aranda, but he had dark blue hair kept in a bun. Blue hair. I knew instinctively it wasn't dyed or anything like that. Definitely not Earth then. Meeting my gaze, the man continued. It took you far too long to get your wits about you and to properly assess your situation. This could easily have been a trap, and killing you would have been easier taking a rock from a newborn Gorva. I did my best not to think about what the hell a Gorva was, but I understood his point. He was right. I didn't respond, though, instead deciding to watch his movements and keeping my spear at the ready. Better, but unfortunately, I am not here to teach you how to fight. Consider my prior words just me pointing out something I noticed. Instead, you are here for integration training, which is a fancy way of saying I will be teaching you nothing at all, and you will be forced to fight till you want to rip your own limbs out from exhaustion, reattach them, then do it all over again. Until all of your traits are integrated properly. 102. Muddy Waters B2. The conversation with the man didn't last long after that short exchange. It wasn't because I didn't have questions for him, and I did have plenty, but he simply left after he finished talking. Fun. I thought about following him for a moment, but changed my mind when I realized that there were growling sounds coming from all around me. It's been a few hours since then, and I am without a shadow of a doubt covered in blood. Not all of it is mine, since some of the things I've killed for sure had a few different colors for blood. Though some of it was probably from cuts and wounds, I had no time to worry about right now. That thought crossed my mind as I ducked under the clawed hand of some furry two-legged monster with 3 eyes. No idea what the hell it was, but after I ducked, I rammed my spear straight into its side and a fountain of blue poured out. It's been a few kills since I saw blue. The last couple ones were all bleeding green. This is far from the training I expected when I got this reward. To be running through a forest on a strange planet being swarmed by monsters for hours without end. I'm pretty sure I have to take a dump, and I'm scared one of these monsters are going to scare the shit out of me, literally. Anyway, even if this was the intended training, shouldn't someone be here to point out flaws? Give advice. Berate me even if I'm doing well. How is this training? I mean, on one hand, I get it. The book on integration explained the extraneous effort required to integrate everything. That is precisely what this training is doing. For a moment, I briefly considered the fact that I could do this back on Earth, but then I realized quickly it simply wasn't possible. Not in any of the dungeons I had access to. So many monsters of so many shapes and sizes, all of which forcing me to fight them all in different ways, twisting my body this way and that. Not forgetting the fact I was in a strange forest in the dark, so I also had to pay attention to the foliage around me just as much as the monsters coming for me. Thankfully, that passive was working wonders in helping to keep me calm and focused. I'm still confused why it didn't do shit against Acolyte Aranda, but that's a matter for another day. In the meantime, I continued to run, duck, slide, wrap around trees, dive into bushes. As I blocked, stabbed, slashed, used my skills and anything and everything I could possibly do it to kill, injure, or delay everything chasing after me. There were some small monsters, some the size of big-ass dogs, others my size and bigger. Some flew, some jumped, others crawled or dug through the earth. All of them are trying to get me. Thankfully, they never came with too many at once that I couldn't find some way to get through. But that wasn't to say it was a lot, and without that passive, I wonder if I would be able to keep going. With all of the screeching, roaring, hissing, and a bunch of other sounds I can't really describe, it would be easy for me to slip into a panicked state and lose my mind after a while. Especially since it was dark as shit, and sometimes I didn't spot a monster until it was right up in my face. Regardless, this continued on for hours longer. I was likely better than a lot of people on Earth when it came to staying in the fight for as long as possible, but even I had limits and I was soon reaching them. My hands and feet were starting to feel like lead weights attached to my body. Everything was getting slightly more sluggish, and my mana levels were dangerously low, and even thinking was starting to become a chore. Then I heard it. Water. I thought for a second my ears were playing tricks on me, but I decided I didn't give a damn if it was. At this point, I had little choice in the matter and pushed my body that little bit more to the sound I heard. Fighting and clawing my way there, my desperation paid off as I finally came face to face with a small river. Or maybe this is a stream. I could jump over it to the other side, and it only looked about waist-high from where I was standing. Not wasting any time, I jumped right in, pulled my pants down and relieved myself, doing numbers 1 and 2 right then and there. I didn't have time to be ashamed about this, and I was hoping the water would wash all the evidence away. Thankfully, it all came out in one fell swoop, so there was no need to exert myself. As important as that was, though, it wasn't the best thing that happened to me in the water. The way strength poured into my body in droves was a truly exhilarating feeling, like putting a dying fish back into the ocean and watching it spring to life. I jumped back out of the water and dove right back into the fray. The monsters hadn't stopped coming for even a second, and a few of them had jumped into the stream with me, but I wanted to fight outside of it. My muscles and the rest of my body would get strained far faster that way. I'll only use the water as a way to regain some strength when I'm at my very last bit of strength. I think that's the best way to get the most out of this training. So with a spring in my step, I continued fighting with everything I had for as long as I could before dipping into the water when I could go no further, and it began anew again. From there, a careful dance began as I fought, took a swim, right back to the fight over and over again. I almost didn't notice when the sun creeped in the sky and forest around me lit up accordingly. Unfortunately, there was no time to take in scenery as the monsters didn't for 1 second stop to allow me that chance, and we just kept going. At some point, I lost track of the passing time, and while the water refreshed my stamina greatly, it didn't cover the need for food. Even with a body that was better than that of a regular human's, I still knew hunger. And with the amount of exertion I was putting it through at the moment, it only sped up that particular counter. The problem was, even if I could catch a fish or something to eat, there was no time to cook it. I grimaced at the idea forming in my head of what I probably had to do. I pushed on as long as I could, but I simply couldn't take it anymore. I needed nutrients. Even if it wasn't a lot, I needed something. Something for my body to burn and use as fuel so I could keep going. Fuck it, I yelled in frustration as I grabbed what looks like the leg, or maybe it was an arm, I don't know. But it's a random limb, and it was close enough for me to grab and still dodge and fight. I even slapped a giant rabbit-looking thing with it, before bringing it to my mouth and biting a large chunk out of it. I want to puke. 103, first trait B2. I did indeed throw up. Multiple times at that, and if the feeling of vomiting wasn't so disgustingly terrible, I probably would have laughed at the second time I threw up. I was in the middle of being attacked by something that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a damn grizzly bear, and I quite literally threw up on his alien-like head. Thankfully, that particular incident worked in my favor as the loss of its eyesight, or perhaps the abhorrent smell of vomit threw it off a bit, and I was able to drive my spear through its neck, practically severing it from the grisly part of its body. That was the worst of it, though. The few times after that were mostly just a lot of spit. My body clearly did not appreciate me feeding it uncooked and unknown monster meat, but I had little choice in the matter. I wasn't given any food, nor could I possibly just wait and see if the onslaught of monsters would ever stop long enough for me to actually take my time to start a fire, even if it was just to heat the damn meat up a bit. So after my initial throwing up, I went back in for more bites of the meat time and time again. Each time I swallowed brought on more vomiting only a few seconds later, but unlike the first time, it wasn't followed by multiple bouts of vomiting. Just one, and eventually even that singular one didn't come as quickly, and before long, who knows how long, even that ending. The taste by itself was enough to force the feeling of wanting to throw up in me, and that never for once changed. But eventually, I was able to keep it down and give my body some much-needed nutrients, and I made sure to swallow a few important gulps of water to replace all the fluids I've been losing. Honestly, this shit was terrible. All of it. I know it was for the sake of training, but holy shit, man. Fuck it, though, we move. I got no other choice but to keep moving, to keep fighting, eating strange meat when I can no longer bear to be hungry, and then doing it all over again. That was one part of this whole thing that's been there since the beginning, the repetition. Even as more and more monsters that I hadn't seen at the beginning showed themselves around me before being blasted to the face with a ball of water or being severed with my spear, the concept never once changed. Fight, fight, and fight some more. This continued for a while. I am honestly not sure how long it's been since I found the stream of water, and I do my best not to let it cloud my thoughts, as the feeling like I've been here for far too long comes with the existential dread that I've abandoned my family, and I'll return home to dead bodies. That type of emotion isn't something I can afford to dwell on, so I force into a dark and lonely place within my mind and keep it there. Instead, choosing to train my mind to forcefully run a mechanical loop. Kill water, kill water, kill water, kill water, kill water, kill. Water. K-ill. Let. Time passes. I don't know how much. I don't think too much about anything apart from killing and getting back to the water anymore. Those are the only two thoughts that have resounded in my mind for the past I don't know how long, and it likely would have continued to be that way if a notification hadn't forced its way into my mind amid the repetitive state it was seemingly stuck in. Ding. Soaked pulse membrane, rooted, has been integrated. Yeah, there was that, huh? I almost forgot the whole purpose of me continuing to fight through of all these monsters, to push myself as hard as I was going and doing all the downright dirty things I needed to do to survive. This was why to integrate my traits. A sense of clarity came back to me even amidst all the fighting, one that seemed to reinvigorate me all the more to keep going, and one more thing along with it. I didn't have time to open my status and confirm, but one or more of my stats just got improved greatly. I can't tell for certain if more than one stat improved, but I know without a shadow of a doubt that mana was one of them. My mana pool increased sharply, and the capacity to hold more of it didn't just get bigger. All the new space that was created got filled in immediately. I grinned almost immediately after, and honestly what was proven soon after to not be a good decision. I unleashed my most powerful skill twice overall for the sake trying to clear space, and finally give myself some much-needed breathing room. It was my first time using Ocean's Maw since this whole thing began, since a skill like that, under the type of strain I was under, simply didn't feel like it was worth it. The added mana gave me all the confidence in the world to finally make use of it, and for a time it worked, and I did indeed get that breathing room I so desperately wanted. But that was only for a time. The forest around me was constantly under a cacophony of noise from all the different monsters constantly attacking me. From roars to high-pitched squeaks, to wailing banshee-like cries and everything in between. There was just so much noise that after a while it all just blended into one sludge of mess. But then it all changed. A roar so loud that it practically silenced the shouting of everything else. Unfortunately, that didn't mean it stopped everything else from attacking me and seemed to only rile them up even further. I cursed myself 1,000 times for my foolishness. Obviously, there was a chance that this level of monster was always going to come after me. Or maybe it was the fact that one of my traits had just integrated successfully that managed to trigger a second level to the fighting. But I couldn't help but link this newest opponent surely heading my way to the fact I decided to unleash a couple powerful skills out of nowhere. Damn it, Freddy. A few more moments passed, and something of a truly massive size in stature came sprawling out of the tree line. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I fully expected to see another wild-looking creature that I could only successfully describe properly by combining other normal animals from Earth. But no, I recognized this beast of a creature all too well. In fact, there was a part of my mind that actually appreciated seeing it. A massive gorilla. Not quite the level of that one extremely famous gorilla seen back on home, but holy shit was it huge. That was where any good feelings I had about seeing something that I wished I could see as a boy in person ended with finality. It was cool and all, but it was barreling straight towards me, and the ground was shaking in what felt like deference as it moved with power in my direction. Shit. 104, Frowning Acolyte B2. There wasn't going to be a way out of fighting this giant ape, but there wasn't an easy way of going about doing that either. Fighting something like that by itself would already require me to have my full focus on it with very little room for mistakes. Having who knows how many other monsters around me wasn't going to give me the time or space to do that with any real effectiveness. Yeah, I had far more mana now, and a powerful attack under my belt, but I couldn't ignore the monsters around me. Just because I had the water didn't mean this became easy all of a sudden, or the mental burden of it all went away. No. This was a careful balance that I've been managing to maintain for who knows how long at this point, and a variable like this added to the picture could easily be thing that sends that balance toppling to the floor like a tower built too tall without a good foundation. Unfortunately, reality didn't care whether my balance was on the verge of falling or not. It would come with its problems, and it would be up to you to meet them and solve them or get rolled over. Obviously, getting rolled over was not an option, though an easy way ahead didn't seem to exist. I had no doubt in my mind whether this big-ass gorilla was going to take it easy on me or not. Without a shadow of a doubt, it was going to come here and try to kill me just as much as all these other monsters around me. But while it was well within my capabilities to dodge and fight the monsters around me, as long as I was careful and remained that way, even with any small advantage that presented itself before me, that sentiment didn't really apply to the situation I was about to face. Needless to say, I would have to take something of a risk. Running wasn't really an option. The big-ass gorilla looked slow, but I've seen gorillas moving in plenty of videos. Those bastards were not slow, and if this thing moved anything like a regular gorilla would, there was no way I was going to outrun it. It was at times like this where I missed my dashing skill. I couldn't help but thinking to myself that maybe it wasn't a good idea to just get rid of it like that. But I can't cry over spilled milk, especially when the milk has long since been rotten by now. The gorilla wasn't necessarily upon me yet, but he was getting closer. The earth continued to shake even more vigorously as it stepped near me, reminding me I didn't have a lot of time left. I moved toward the water, forever thankful I found it, since if I were to not have access to water in this situation, it would probably be the death of me. Crushing descent. I activated the skill and poured a good chunk of my mana into it, something I've experimented with slightly since this all began. Of course, the longer I kept it active, the more mana it would use, but I realized I could somewhat control just how much goes into activating the skill in the first place. It was still very hard to limit the amount of mana to a minimum, but it was far easier to just empty whatever I had into the skill without regard for anything else. I didn't quite do that exactly since I still needed some mana, and the water was very helpful in building it back up, but it wasn't like it just filled me back to the top instantly. Anyway, the skill did what it had to do, and the monsters around crashed into the ground in a chaotic display of gravity working against them. I didn't waste any time after that, and bullets of water formed in the air and shot out towards the gorilla. They were too fast, and it was too big to dodge them. Or maybe it simply didn't care. Either way, all dozen bullets pelted it, but I could see no visible damage. Shit. I managed to let another 2 volleys fly off towards the gorilla before the strain of maintain. The crushing descent got too much to bear while using another skill. Unfortunately for me, the gorilla didn't seem to be put off at all. I knew right then and there that there was only ever going to be one skill in my repertoire that would actually do real damage to this beast. All right then, you big-ass gorilla. Let's see who dies first, you piece of shit. Now, while Freddy was fighting monsters and preparing himself to fight something akin to a boss monster, the same man who welcomed his arrival to this area was watching Freddy's exploits from the safety and comfort of a small office. That very man had something of a frown on his face at the moment. The idea of the training was to have Freddy, or anyone else for that matter, fight numerous different monsters of all different shapes and sizes, abilities, strengths and weaknesses, all of which were meant to constantly push whoever was undergoing the training to move their body at a high intensity in far more ways than they typically would for a significant period of time. Doing so for a very high intensity stretch over the course of days, weeks, or even months would almost guarantee an individual to successfully integrate their traits. This was not a new concept, and it was not unique to the church, though it was still a highly valued training area, considering that it was all under supervision and with relative safety should something go amiss. This type of training was especially valuable for anyone that was born on a more civilized planet, ones that were long since integrated, and unlike Earth were not facing a subjugation. On planets such as those, they would be hard-pressed in most circumstances to find an area where they would be under constant attack from a varying spectrum of beasts. Sure, there were some planets that fit that description, or very specific areas where something like that could happen, but more times than not that wasn't the case. Now, while Freddy did not come from a civilized planet, as it was currently undergoing a subjugation, the number of places on Earth at this moment where a scenario like this could be replicated was essentially 0. Which for Freddy, this was indeed an extremely valuable training exercise. But the acolyte overseeing this training could not help but lament the fact that Freddy was clearly attuned to water, and he had found himself a stream where he was able to regain lost mana and stamina at a relatively decent rate. Initially, there was nothing wrong with that fact. Freddy found an advantage, and he was making use of it. He likely would have raised a problem if Freddy decided to stay in the water permanently and fight, but the fact that he left and only went back when he was too tired to continue was an honorable choice, and the reason why the acolyte hadn't done something about it. And by doing something, this wasn't necessarily to say that Freddy was breaking rules. No, it was only to ensure that he would continue to get the most out of the training. Fighting while being supplied mana and stamina constantly without end was not going to meet the desired effect of integrating traits. If so, the acolyte would not have allowed this to happen. That was until Freddy integrated his first trait, and then immediately unleashed 2 powerful skills in the area around him. That wasn't going to fly in the acolyte's mind, so he unleashed the deterrent, something that should have forced Freddy to leave the area and continue roaming the massive forest and fighting until he couldn't fight anymore. But instead of running, the acolyte watched Freddy plant himself in the water and prepare to fight something he was not going to be able to win against. Even with that powerful skill, defeating the enemy sent after him was not going to be possible. That gorilla was not something that any ordinary F grade would be able to handle. Even if Freddy was unordinary, He would have needed to be the absolute top 1% of F grades in existence to actually kill the beast approaching him without special means or circumstances at play. Perhaps if this was the deep ocean and Freddy met it there, he would have a far higher chance, but like this, impossible. The gorilla was firmly an E-grade existence. It was restricted a bit for the purpose of being a deterrent, but E-grade was E-grade. 105, Smiling Freddy B2. Ugh. My eyes flashed open with a shout as I came to and frantically scanned the area around me for the damn gorilla, the monsters, the where am I? I was not in a room, but I was on a cot of some kind in what appeared to be a very small camp. There was a small tent over the cot without any sides and only a roof, one high enough that I could stand underneath it without issues. It wasn't that wide, though, and the camp itself was literally just the cot and the tent. There was nothing else here, but where was here? I was pretty sure the forest around the camp was the same one I've been fighting in for the last. Well, I'm not really sure how long it's been, but either way it feels like the same place. Yet, it was different. For one, I didn't hear the onslaught of who knows how many monsters coming to kill me, and for two, the stream that was practically a lifesaver. It was gone. I could possibly find it again, or maybe even another one altogether, but that wasn't the point here. Why was I unconscious, and who the hell brought me here? Obviously, the most apparent answer was likely the gorilla knocked me out. Without seemingly breaking any bones in my body, or I was given medical care somehow. And then that acolyte brought me here. Or maybe there's other people here, perhaps other trainees, and one of them found me and brought me here. You're awake. Just like the first time this man approached me when I first arrived here. His voice came out of nowhere even though I already looked in the area all around me. And I snapped to the left, and there he was standing at the edge of tiny camp, which was basically right next to me considering how small it was. I looked at him for a moment, then responded. I'm assuming you brought me here. Yes, do you remember anything? I didn't. No matter how long or hard I thought about it, I remembered nothing up until the gorilla finally neared me. After that, it was all dark, and then I woke up here. I don't remember. You were knocked unconscious by the beating heart of the creature. There were other factors at play, but that is the core of it all. Honestly, I didn't know how to react to that, and my mind froze for a second as the words rattled around in there. The beating heart? Just a heartbeat. So there wasn't even some grand battle involved that led to the mutual destruction of both of us. Or, well, just something else. What the hell did it mean to get knocked out by a heartbeat? Sigh. I suppose I should just be glad the damn thing didn't kill me. Being glad for the fact that I was alive, I refocused back on the acolyte. How strong was it? The E grade. Well, that explains somethings then. An entire grade above me. Even though I was at max level for the F grade and only had to integrate some traits and then fuse them after, the gap between myself and the E grade was apparently still as wide as a chasm. I doubt even Grandpa would have been able to actually do any real damage to the gorilla if it really was that strong. This, of course, meant that nothing I did would have been able to change the reality of my situation. I would have died. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If the acolyte hadn't saved me, then I would have died. Thank you. I gave him a sincere thanks, and he just nodded before moving on. Maybe it wasn't a big deal to him. This area is to be your staging ground for the remainder of your training. At most, you will be allowed 1 night of rest every 3 days. At all other times, you will be in the forest continuing to undergo training. If 3 days have elapsed and you decide to return here to rest, you are required to leave at first light the next day and not to return for 3 more days after that. If you decide to return before the appointed time, you will not return alone. Before I had time to digest everything he just said in its entirety and to ask any follow-up questions I might have had, he simply turned and walked away. I stared straight at his back, but he still somehow vanished from before my sight without an indication. I wonder if he's in the E grade too. How else would he have saved me from the gorilla? And I doubt they'd have a training environment where they couldn't control the monsters within. Very interesting. Anyway, I heard him loud and clear. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that since he didn't mention anything about today, and it's already getting dark out at the moment, I could probably stay here till first light, as he called it. I don't have an alarm system here, but I just hope the light hitting my face will be enough to get me up and moving. Especially since he said I returned here early, it wouldn't be alone, which I'm sure meant that the monsters would follow me back instead of granting me the peace I have right now. It only makes sense for the same rule to apply to overstaying here in the morning. Nothing much I could there, but hope I didn't sleep in too much. But since I have the time, let's finally take a look at my new status. Feels like it's been forever since I've actually looked at it in detail. Status. Name Fred Williams. Born world, Earth, ENWPI 70059. Race human. Faction the Williams family. Age 17. Grade F. Level 50. XP 17,007. Mana 205/205/40. Stat points 0. Traits. Trait 1 Heart of Currents Unbound. Trait 2 Soaked Pulse Membrane Rooted Int. Trait 3 Crushing Depth Frame Unbound. Class. Current class Abyss Diver. Class passive Stillness of the Deep. Class grade Unbound. Class rarity Rooted. Skills. 1 Aqua Barrage Unbound. 2 Ocean's Maw Unbound. 3 Crushing Descent Unbound. Attributes. Strength 34. Dexterity 20. Vitality 20+3. Endurance 22. Mana 26+15. Willpower 12. Perception 17. Intelligence 12+5. Oh shit. 3 different attributes were upgraded, and the main one, mana, was given an additional 15 points. I knew that's where the bulk of the integration went, but that was not a small amount, and it of course explained where all that additional mana came from. Before this, my mana stat read 130/130, and now it was all the way up to 205. Even the reserve mana that the trait granted me had rose from 30 to 40. That wasn't something to laugh about at all, and if only one trait gave me this much of a boost, a rooted one at that, I'm really going to be looking forward to seeing what type of boost 2 unbound traits gave me. Then to top it all off, even after all of the traits were successfully integrated, I would still have to fuse them afterwards, which would then give me another massive boost if Grandpa was anything to go by. And he did this the less efficient way, leaving him without a lot of the power he would have gained had he done it properly. Honestly, I couldn't stop myself from smiling. 106. Let's begin B2. One day after my last trait was integrated, no more monsters came out, and I woke up that morning with the acolyte standing not far from me. Maybe I would have jumped or been frightened if I wasn't so used to all manner of things jumping out at me out of nowhere since I've been here, but this was nothing. Especially not when I was expecting it at some point. Your training is now complete. You will return from the same place you entered from. May Rajivas be with you. That was it. No long speech or congratulations for completing the training. Just hey, you're finished now and goodbye. It felt a little anticlimactic, but I appreciated the directness of it all. It was time to go back home, and spending a second longer just to talk about nothing wasn't really something I was looking forward to. My mind was on much more important things. My family was aware of the fact that this would be a lengthy training since I was previously warned about that, but we had no idea just how lengthy that was going to be. Was it a few days? Perhaps a few years? No one knew for sure, but the fact remained that even one day missed could be detrimental to the family and Ladger as a whole. Yes, Grandpa was there now, and he was some kick-ass super old man now, but if thousands of those lava bastards showed up, he wouldn't be able to defend the family by himself. During the training, I did my best to keep thoughts like that from leaving the deep and dark parts of my mind, since it would only be a detriment for me. But that it was over, it was all I could think about. Something that only got heightened when the acolyte said I'd be returning back to where I came from, which is on the family compound in what was left of Grandpa's house. Would it still be there? Or would the rest of it have gotten destroyed too? What about my family? I lost 2 uncles the last time I was gone for a long time. Would it be all of them this time, or perhaps my aunts and cousins too? Sigh. It didn't do me any good to have thoughts like this, training or not. But that's unfortunately how my mind worked sometimes. Once it latched on to something, it was hard to let it go, and I was always 1 second away from coming up with a random scenarios to fit whatever thought crossed my mind. Sometimes it was to my benefit, and it was that sort of thinking that helped me navigate certain situations or to drive critical thinking. But when it happened during an important moment, like fighting with my life on the line, for example, that wasn't very helpful. Anyway, after the acolyte left, it took roughly 2 minutes exactly for my view of the forest to shift completely, and I was again found myself on my hands on knees and my spear at the side. Not making the same mistake as last time, I grabbed my spear and sprang to my feet to assess for any potential threats. Freddy, where the hell did you come from? The only threat here was Raycon eating a sandwich. It's good to be back. What? It only took about an hour to get me caught up with everything that was going on. First of all, I was gone for nearly 3 weeks. It felt much longer than that at times, but it wasn't like there was a calendar for me to look at and keep track of the passing days. But that was still a significant amount of time to be away from the family. Thankfully and honestly, very weirdly, nothing of serious note happened. The lava people had not been back to Laja since we removed them, and the people here have not faced a single attack. It was odd, very odd, but it was something I was thankful for. Instead, we've been focusing on getting stronger and making sure Laja was safe. The family has helped to coordinate many resource and missing person trip all over Laja, and has even took it upon themselves to help bring people through the snakebite dungeon, along with warning those wishing to progress through the gauntlet about the battle number 50. I made sure before I left that all of knew not to attempt until they were confident they could fight in the ocean, and all of them listened. Even Grandpa, who was the closest person here with a real chance, did not attempt it. Honestly, I didn't think he'd be able to do it. He was extremely powerful now, but that didn't necessarily mean all the power he was able to bring forth on land would translate well in the ocean with a damn Leviathan on his ass. He would not be getting the same empowerment and rejuvenation that I felt in the water. Perhaps it would be better to attempt it with better gear, or even actually breaking through to the E grade. But that was it. No big news at all. Once again, a little anticlimactic, but who said drama was ever a good thing? So obviously, after learning nothing was on fire, and all my family members were still alive, I immediately locked myself away into a room to focus on fusing my traits into a gene. There was no reason to wait any longer, and who knows if tomorrow would be the day things popped off again. So I told folks to leave me be and prepared myself for fusing, which of course included going over the book again and making sure I committed every single part to memory. I had 3 traits. One would serve as the base, another the bridge, and then the final one as the binder. Figuring out which should be which needs to be done now, there wouldn't be any time for that during the process. The base is the core. The bridge determines how the base and the binder interacts and influences each other, and the binder locks it all into place and into existence. I had 2 unbound traits and 1 rooted, which I think means one of the unbound ones should be the base, and after looking at my traits, that was a pretty easy decision. Heart of Currents is too important for it not to be the base. Then, the soaked pulse membrane will be the bridge and crushing depth frame will bind it all together. All right, locked in, and I'm not changing it. Form there I will need to pull on all 3 anchor points, then bring them together in the correct order while keeping it all steady, and then if successful my new gene will form. All right, easy peasy lemon squeezy, nothing to it all, is what I wanted to say, but this was far too important for that. So I spent the next few hours going over it again and again to ensure I had it all down. Once I felt like I reached a good point in memorizing everything so much that I could damn near teach it, and my confidence in succeeding was as high as it was ever going to be, I took some time to clear my mind. All right, let's begin. 107. Abyssium B2. First things first is the anchor points. So this part was a little tricky. It wasn't like there was something easily grasped to describe as the anchor point. I couldn't see my traits the way I could see my hands and feet. I know they were there, and I could feel some differences in my body that weren't there before. The key here was the mana. That was how I had to sense the traits, obviously. A part of that was knowing where to look. Part of it was obviously in or around my heart, so I closed my eyes and focused everything I had mentally on my heart, not trying to sense the organ itself, but the concentration of mana lingering in and around it. It took a few moments, well, maybe more than a few moments and likely a couple minutes, but I could feel it. One blob of powerful mana that pulsed with every beat of my heart. Slowly but surely, I painted a clear picture of it in my mind, sensing the mana, where it came from, where it went, and all of that. Almost like sensing blood being pumped through various veins from my heart. Eventually, I felt like I had a good picture of it in my mind, and the heart of currents was quite literally in my heart, but intertwined with it in a way, though not quite a new heart, just an improved one. Focusing on the area where the mana concentrated the most, I pulled at it. It was a weird feeling because I was usually pulling something and using my hands to grab hold of it and pull, like a door or anything else for that matter. But this time I was grabbing it mentally, literally focusing on the mana itself and with my own control over said mana, pulling at it. At first, there was a bit of resistance, and I thought for sure I was doing something wrong, so I relaxed. Not knowing what else to do, I tried it again, and this time when the resistance came, I decided to pull a little bit more. The only reason I did so, apart from not knowing what else to do, was the fact that I felt no pain. I could feel a strain, like someone was pulling on my finger, but it didn't hurt. That little extra push I gave it, or pull I should say, seemed to work. I could quite literally feel the mana forming that line to my chest before actually exiting. It felt weird, like very weird, like someone stuck their hand into my body and then pulled something out. It did not feel normal, but I focused and kept my mind from straining because this was a delicate process, and I just kept pulling and pulling and pulling until there was nothing else to pull. When I opened my eyes, what I saw was a pulsing ball of blue, not like sky blue, but it felt like I was staring at the deep ocean, like I could see waves and the receding of the tide, all of it. It felt odd, but it was beautiful to look at. I took a deep breath, shifted my gaze from the ball of deep ocean blue, and once again focused on my insides. That was the base now for the bridge. The soaked pulse membrane was a bit different. It was quite literally spread all over my body, and I remembered getting it all the way back at level 25 and how powerful I felt at that time. But where was the concentration of mana? I searched my body, but there was nothing. Even now that I think about it, the same was true for my frame. There was nothing. I kept my mind calm because I couldn't lose focus here since I had already successfully pulled on one anchor. So I thought about it. My membrane, isn't it kind of like my nervous system? I focused my attention on my brain. I didn't know much about biology, or was it anatomy? This wasn't the time to think about that, so I reined my mind back in and focused on my brain. And there it was. It wasn't the same level of concentration of mana like my heart was, but it was more like a knot of threads that flowed down into the rest of my body. Feeling confident I had found what I was looking for, I pulled on it just like I did with the heart, and before long another trait was floating in front of me. It resembled the first one a lot, but I could have sworn I could see threads in it. Not wanting to waste time trying to figure that out, I focused once again. The final binder would be the crushing depth frame, and after some thought and a bit of searching, I found it nestled in the middle of my spine. Much like the other two, I pulled and brought it out, and now all three traits were laid bare before me. Phew. Time for the home stretch. Knowing I wanted the Heart of Currents as the base, I left it where it was and instead pulled on the soaked pulse membrane and brought it on top of the Heart of Currents. And it took a lot of concentration, so much so that I was sure I was sweating as if I've been running for more miles by now. Thankfully, as the book said, the traits wanted to fuse, so after dealing with the resistance of pulling them together, the membrane clung to the heart and stayed there. A bright light slowly growing brighter as the seconds passed. I couldn't completely take my focus of both traits, but I only needed minimal concentration to keep them together. Instead, I shifted majority of my focus to pulling the crushing depth frame over and starting the convergence thing. The best way to describe what I was doing was like balancing something in my left hand, while pulling on something heavy in my right hand with the goal of adding it to the left, and then balancing all of them together, but with my mind only. It took some time, but I managed to do it, sweat now pooling at the area where I'm sitting, but I did it. The traits converged upon one another, and eventually, I no longer had to do anything as the light now grew so bright, I couldn't see what was happening at all. A few more minutes passed as the light became the center of the room, and then... Ding! Traits have successfully fused into a gene. Abyssium. Your mana will naturally gain the weight of the deep abyss of the ocean. It is no longer the same mana shared by others around you, but instead something truly born of the deepest depths. To become the abyss is to crush those who swim too close. I barely had time to gawk at the description that pooped up in front of me before I literally felt something heavy slam into the center of my chest, and I was almost knocked completely over. It was like someone threw a 5 lb medicine ball at me, but instead of falling to the ground after hitting me or having all of its momentum push me backwards, it simply vanished within my chest, and it was almost like I could quite clearly feel like it was sinking into the depth of my very being. Where the traits connected and rooted to my various body parts, they aligned with. The gene was rooting itself to my soul. The answer didn't necessarily come from a deep place of thought, but I was willing to bet that I was right. The concept of a soul was an elusive one, but that is only place I could decide the location of the gene. Holy shit, man. 108, no sir, B2. Name, Fred Williams. Born world, Earth, ENWPI 70059. Race, human. Faction, the Williams family. Age, 17. Grade, F. Level, 50. XP, 17,007. Mana, 255. Stat points, 0. Traits, 1 Abyssium, unbound. Traits, Trait 1. Trait 2. Trait 3. Class, current class, Abyss Diver. Class passive, Stillness of the Deep. Class grade, Unbound. Class rarity, Rooted. Skills, 1 Aqua Barrage, Unbound. 2 Ocean's Maw, Unbound. 3 Crushing Descent, Unbound. Attributes, Strength, 74. Dexterity, 35. Vitality, 48. Endurance, 47. Mana, 51. Willpower, 22. Perception, 22. Intelligence, 22. After the finally getting my wits about me after everything with the gene calmed down, I finally took a look at my status, and honestly it was kind of a lot to take in all at once. My stats underwent another qualitative leap with strength, and mana being the biggest risers. Well, that was good and all, but it was getting kind of lopsided, especially when I wanted to be a trident user. Having high dexterity in relation to me strength would be pretty important if I wanted to be successful in that endeavor. Not much I could do about it now, but I'll have to pay special attention to that fact when I can finally earn new skill points again. But I did lose my traits, which kind of sucked, since I have no idea if that meant I would completely lose the benefits of Heart of Currents. That was a pretty important trait when it came to fighting in water, and being able to use powerful skills without too much of a rest, if any at all. Losing that would be a very painful trade-off. Though I suppose I can't get too upset at it. That description was actually insane. Your mana will naturally gain the weight of the deep abyss of the ocean. It is no longer the same mana shared by others around you, but instead something truly born of the deepest depths. To become the abyss is to crush those who swim too close. Like bro, what? To become the abyss is to crush those who swim too close. That is dope as hell, and it literally feels like all those moments when the MC got some cool as reward, and I'd be smiling at the book with like kid in a candy store. I have half a mind to get up and go fuck some shit up right this second, but almost as if the system could read my thoughts. It literally waited till right at that moment to hit me with another notification. Ding! You have the Met qualifications to undergo the evolution to the E grade. Alert, at your current stage in a world undergoing subjugation, advancing to the E grade would contribute significantly to the beginning of Phase 3. Grade lift. That was the end of the notification, but it was enough. I was already aware of it since Grandpa went through with it once before, though I was honestly a bit worried about it even now. Our family has some strong fighters, yes, but there are too many people on Earth for our situation to be completely unique. It would be completely far-fetched to assume Grandpa and I were the only ones who had the ability to evolve to the E grade at the moment. We discussed this already, and there was no easy solution to the matter. We could just wait until the grade lift was happening and then evolve right then and there. But what if it's too late by then? What if evolving took significant time, and then an E-grade red alien shows up at our doorstep during that time? What the hell were we going to do then? Now, even if I was to ignore all of that, what about Earth in general? I wasn't the most patriotic of people, but shit is different when it comes to the planet as a whole, I think. Especially when they are quite literally trying to subjugate the planet. Shouldn't we be actively trying to eliminate them from the entire planet? Like the city down south where most of the people died and the lava folks were still in control. I think we should do something about that. Well, this is definitely the hero talk that gets people killed. Heroes either die a glorious death for all to bear witness, or eventually fall from grace, and like the old saying goes, they live long enough to see themselves become a villain. That's not the life I want, but who said I had to go be a hero? I can just embrace the murder hobo lifestyle that some authors like to make their MCs. I owed those red fucks a debt anyway. It's well within my right to go collect it. But then again, that was still only one part to it. Both the Snakebite and the Gauntlet dungeons clearly had E-grade levels to them. Phase 3 was not even the final damn phase. There were 2 more of them, and the last one was literally called Test and wouldn't come for another 100 years. I highly doubt they were giving us 100 years just to get to the E-grade. It hadn't even been a year yet, and both Grandpa and I were already here. So wouldn't that some damn D-grade bastard or shit, maybe even C-grade, was coming to get us after that time? Now, if all of that was right, then doesn't that mean that waiting around like this instead of advance as quickly as possible wasn't in our best interest? Sigh. It was all pretty stressing to think about, and well, even after spelling it out like this, I didn't know what to do. So, I'm going to ignore it for a bit before I get a headache. I've been sitting in this room for a while now, and I need to stretch my legs and get a feel for the increase in stats. What? Well, think you could take Grandpa in a fight. I was standing in our little lazy river while Raycon looked down at me with a smirk. He's been out here with me as I tried various different things for the past 30 minutes or so. Running, punching, jumping, swinging my spear, all of that and then some. At first it was a little rough since my body was literally stronger than my brain remembered it being, and I almost fell on my face a few times trying to run. But eventually everything seemed to sync up after about 10 minutes or so. Honestly, shit was kind of scary just how much stronger I felt. If it was just a regular fist fight, the old man might still be better than me. His smirk grew at my words. So you're saying if it was more than just a fist fight, Grandpa would get smoked right? I knew what he was trying to do, but I gave in anyway. It was more fun that way, and he knew that too. I wouldn't say smoked, but if Mana were to come in the picture, things would be different. That's all I'm saying. He grinned, didn't respond, and then walked away. I wasn't lying, though. That description wasn't lying about my mana actually being different. That gene allowed me to have far more control over my mana than I realized, and when I tried to extend it out of my body. I loved over my shoulder at the tree that snapped in half. I happened to be standing next to it, and the shit literally snapped under the weight of my mana. I didn't activate crushing descent, and that was the result. Even now, I was lightly controlling the water near my hand, making it move as I wished with nothing but the intent in my mind and the control of the mana that dwelled within the water. Yeah, Grandpa wouldn't be able to do shit if mana came into the picture. Not that I'd ever say that to his face. No, sir. 109. Approved plans B2. So I heard you think that you could whoop my ass with one hand tied behind your back. I was just getting ready to greet my grandpa when he beat me to the punch with that opening line. I damn near froze where I stood since I wasn't expecting anything like that at all. He had only just got back I then noticed Raycon standing not too far from him. Did the little bastard run to meet him first just tell him that? I glared at him before looking back towards Grandpa. Me beat you, maybe only in swimming, Grandpa. There were a number of comments thrown back and forth between Grandpa and I, with Raycon carefully chiming in with his own little jokes every now and then. I gotta give it to him since he was perfectly playing the role of a subtle instigator. For once, though, I didn't mind and was instead more than willing to go along with his antics. I think we all recognized that fact, but no one was going to mention it. But eventually everything came to an end, and it was time for more serious conversations. It was time for another family meeting, but for the first time I don't know if I've ever done this before, but I'm the one who called for the family meeting. I might have suggested having one in the past once or twice, but this is probably the first time I've actually gone around and told everyone we needed to gather and have a serious discussion. I've made up my mind about what I want to do, and it's the type of choice that will affect not just me, but potentially all of Earth too. That wasn't something I could just be selfish about and not tell anybody. Shoot, I was even willing to be convinced otherwise if one or all of them could up with a good enough reason. Now, unfortunately, our theater room is going to be out of commission for the foreseeable future things to favorite lava aliens and all of their antics. Another thing I have to pay them back for. Anyway, we were in the living room, which was mostly all right. The floor is yours, Mr. Williams. That was Grandpa who said that with a smirk on his face. Thank you, Lance. I smirked right back at him as I called him by his first name, which got some chuckles from everyone else. But it was time to get to business, so I just got right into it. Thanks for coming, everyone, and I don't want to waste everyone's time, so I'll be blunt. I want to evolve to the E grade. More than a few people raised their eyebrows, but no one looked particularly disapproving. Grandpa just looked as if I piqued his interest. I continued on, though. I know we talked about the potential problems that could bring, not just for us, but for literally the entire planet. I get that, but I don't want to wait for problems to come to our door for us to do something. We've been forced to react time and time again, and I think it's time to be proactive. Phase 3 isn't the last phase of the subjugation, which means I think it's a fair assessment that we may even have to face someone in the D grade by the end of it all. Sitting on our hands just waiting for a problem to come to us isn't the solution. There are still so many things we can do to get stronger right here and now. There are so many different things in the faction shop that we need far more gold than we have to purchase. Won't be any time to do that if we wait for the problems to come, instead of attacking the problems head-on. To be honest with you, family, I'm not scared of these damn aliens. Language. Sorry, Mom, but you all get me. I'm not scared of them at all. The only reason they've been able to do real damage to us is by catching us off guard. We've proven multiple times now that if we spend some time to get stronger and level the playing field, we are not just able to match them, we are better than them. Honestly, that part doesn't make much sense to me. We really shouldn't be able to be so much stronger than them so quickly, but facts are facts. We are better if given time. I'm willing to bet we'd be better at the E grade too. I don't want a scamper to evolve to the E grade when we have no choice. I want to be firmly within that level so that when they arrive, I can surprise them with some real shocking abilities. I was definitely going to say shit, but a quick glance at my mother made me pivot quickly. I wonder what grade I would need to reach before I could stop being scared of my mom. Does a grade like that even exist? Anyway, that was pretty much all I had to say, and I could see the gears turning in the heads of all my family members. But of course, it was Grandpa who spoke first. Hell, I say go for it, Freddy. I'll hold back until it's necessary, but I want you and everyone else to soar as far as you can. Don't stop for whatever reason, just keep going. If it causes a problem, we'll handle it as a family. Just keep going. For a while, no one else said anything. Then Dad spoke up. The old man likes to be dramatic, but in this case, I couldn't have said it any better. Continue to rise, son. We'll be right behind you. That brought on a chorus of agreement, and with that, my decision was made. I would evolve to the E grade. But that didn't necessarily mean I would do it right away. I had only just integrated and fused my traits into a gene. I think I've read enough books to know that while rapid advancement could seem good at a glance, it could also ruin you. It was probably a good idea to spend some time letting my body get used to its new strength and abilities, and to also dedicate more than just 30 minutes to it. Even my newly improved mana control should be exercised and practiced fully. So that's what I did. Somewhere hidden within the Gauntlet dungeon. I have heard your call, Deacon. What news do you have, Acolyte Aranda? So far, there have been only one to conquer the best set to guard the path to the E-grade trials. I wonder if it is too much of a challenge for those that dwell here. If only one has passed, then it is more than enough. With that being said, I believe more will follow before the subjugation is complete. This is a planet of humans. Push them hard enough, and a few will rise above the rest like the mountains of our home. It is how humans are. Most of them will cower, but the few who dare to fight, who dare to climb and push back against their oppressions, will become strong enough to contend with the peaks laid before them. Remember, Acolyte Aranda, it is a reason why the great Revigas always pays the price to send a gauntlet to their planets, regardless if it's during a subjugation or an official integration. So instead of worrying about how many pass, I ask that you instead focus on bringing those who do into our church. I have received your wisdom, Deacon. 110, Princeling B2. 2 weeks passed in a flash. Honestly, it was kind of surprising that no attacks or any sign of even scouts came, but after a while I stopped stressing about it. Whether they came or not made no difference to my current goals. Goals I think I've pretty much accomplished. I've quite literally spent almost every moment of the past 2 weeks putting my body through an intensive workout. Part of me wished I could go back to the integration training forest from that church, but I made do with what I had. A multitude of trips through the Snakebite dungeon, and many more runs through the F-grade portion of the Gauntlet dungeon. At first, I was worried I wouldn't be able to do it anymore, but Acolyte Aranda ensured that it was possible to do it as many times as I wished, but there would be no reward. That was fine, I had no need for a reward, but spending significant time getting used to my body was the most important, and I particularly enjoyed my battles against the newborn Leviathan. They were far different now than the first time I ran into it. In fact, I spent more time swimming around and learning how to control the water around me than actually fighting against the Leviathan. It was exhilarating. I loved every single second I got to spend in the water, and more than ever before it almost felt like the water loved my presence within it. I wasn't yet on the level to literally throw the ocean at people. But I was getting much at controlling the water that was around me. Forming water from nothing without the use of a skill was still out of my reach, though. I could do it, but it took too much of an effort, and it wasn't in any real amounts. I'd keep trying, but for now I was satisfied with being able to influence the water around me. I've tried a few things, but the new thing I've gained from that is using the water to boost the speed in which I swam. Without doing that, I was already faster than I'd ever been simply due to the added strength of my body, but it took it to another level. Unfortunately, the Leviathan was still faster than me in a straight line, but that didn't matter when my mana quite literally made it harder for it to swim, and it only got worse when I activated Crushing Descent. It was a beast. A truly powerful beast. If I was ever caught within the clutches of its jaws, I would be snapped in half without a shadow of a doubt. Getting as strong as I am now has only opened my eyes even more to just how magnificent of a creature this was. A newborn. A damn newborn. What the fuck would do the Leviathan equivalent of a toddler be able to do? Part of me shivered in fear at the thought of it, but another part, the part of me that held my crazier thoughts, was actually excited about. I wanted to fight it. Anyway, it was no longer a contest to fight the creature, and instead just another part of my training. I even included sparring with my training. A lot of it. With Grandpa, Raycon, and my dad mainly, but I sparred with almost everyone in the family and even some folks in the community. It was a lot, but after 2 weeks I think I'm ready. My body finally feels like mine again, and I truly think I'm well aware of my limits and the type of power it contains or lack thereof. For example, punching the Leviathan would do absolutely zero damage to it, not even a scratch. But the floor boss on the first floor of the Snakebite dungeon, I couldn't quite punch a hole through its head, but I could literally beat the shit out of it without too much effort. I did it once, and it honestly felt good. A little too good, though, so I've decided not to do it again. Can't give Crazy Freddy too much life. Anyway, it was finally time. I was ready. I told my family the news and locked myself in one of the free rooms, took a deep breath, and brought up my status. Next to my level, there was a little message that read, "Evolve to E-grade." I focused on it, and a follow-up, yes-no message floated before me. After taking another breath, I clicked yes. Then everything went dark. There was nothing for a while, no feeling of anything. Then just when it was getting to the point where I would freak out, I felt like I could open my eyes, and I found myself in a white space. I couldn't feel my body at all, but for some reason it didn't bother me, almost as if this was my natural state. In fact, when I looked down at my body, I saw nothing, as if I was just a floating wisp in this white room. Part of me wanted to once again freak out at the loss of my body, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. I was just calm. That's good, I guess. Then something changed. Words began to form in front of me, and I felt the excitement within me grow as I read them. These were classes, and it appears I would get to choose. Choose your E-grade class. 1. Abyss Reaper, Unbound. 2. Warlock of Water, Unbound. 3. Spearman of the Depths, Unbound. 3. Unbound options. I probably should have expected that, considering I already had an unbound class even now, but it was nice to see that it wouldn't get worse. That was especially important because I didn't see an option to not change my class. Anyway, let's read through the what the hell. No, what the hell. Hey, if this was about me thinking about keeping my own class, I apologize. I'm very thankful for the options before me. I'm sorry, damn it. I yelled out frantically to who or whatever was in charge of this place, as I literally watched as the classes floating before me began to fade and erode from the screen. It wasn't like the screen itself was vanishing, but the actual class itself was literally eroding on the screen. I could literally see it in real time, and I knew instinctively that these options would not come back to me. I watched on without the ability to change anything as classes were eroded away one by one until there was nothing left. Well, shit. There was nothing else happening for a few moments, and I was starting to think I was shit out of luck, but then it changed. The screen before didn't go away or move at all even after the classes were eroded, but now it was shaking. The shaking continued as dark blue words that seemed to give off a power of their own began to form letter by letter on the screen. Oh shit. I was completely captivated with every piece of it, and then it was over before my eyes a new class floated, and holy shit I feel like. I don't what the hell I feel like, or if there was a comparison to what I'm seeing before my eyes. Princeling of the Abyss. Hell yeah, let's do it. Why the hell wouldn't I want a class that literally had ties to royalty? Obviously, there was no other option here, and it didn't even list a rarity, but I had no doubts at all. I confirmed my decision, and then everything went dark again. 111. Error B2. Nowhere near Earth, there was a planet. It was large enough to dwarf Earth in size many times over without issue. It was also a planet without a single landmass rising above its oceans, and every inch of it was covered in water. It wasn't the only planet in existence to be covered in only water, but this was one special. It is known as the birthplace of one of some particularly important individuals, but no more so than the third head of the faction of water. That being was a god. A truly powerful one. This planet is home to his race of people, one of the strongest water-born and focused races ever. Diphtheans. Humanoid in appearance, bearing 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, and a head, along with a skeletal structure wrapped by extremely strong yet flexible muscles and skin. That skin was a deep dark blue that could easily be mistaken for black, and their eyes as black as the night itself. Their appearance is easily explained by the fact that they find solace in the deepest, darkest depths of the oceans on their planet. The depths is where they find home, and it is also their greatest strength. For no ordinary person could bear the weight of the ocean and live, let alone to be at ease in such an environment. But even the depths themselves was still the surface in the minds of Diphtheans. If one traveled far enough then, what would greet them wasn't the depths, but the abyss instead. The place located where the sun does not share its warmth, the temperature is below freezing, the water rarely moves, and the pressure, the never-ending pressure, was enough to crush almost anyone below the sea grade. It was in these places that the strongest of Diphtheans lived. Just like a lot of planets, the Diphtheans were one race, and if an outside force were to attack the planet, they would be met with the full force of the entire planet, but outside of that, they had factions of their own. Some planets like Earth had many different countries, and even more different groups within those countries to create vast number of local factions. For the Diphtheans, it was slightly different. Under the same powerful god that brought their and the planet to the peak, they were technically all one force and group, but in reality, that force was split into 3 different factions, which the leader of each making up the ruling part of their race. Not including the god, of course. The planet was divided up between these 3 factions and their subordinates, and each group mostly kept to their own territories. But if someone had the ability to watch the faces of all 3 heads at the exact same time, they would have seen all 3 of them frown in that moment. One by one each of them focused on what they just felt, and it didn't take them very long to all reach the same conclusion. Though while they all knew what happened, how each reacted was far different than the other. Find it and kill it. Find the young lord and bring him here safely, no matter the cost. Find the newest bearer of the mantle and force him to swear a system oath of servitude. The words were different and all had different intentions, but one thing was certain. The words spoken by these 3 individuals that could be considered the absolute peak of the A grade, with all of them already being able to step into the S grade whenever they so wished. Their words could never be ignored. Orders were passed down, and all over the planet Diphtheans began to move. POV Fred. Waking up with a banging headache wasn't very high on the list of how I liked waking up. But it only took a few seconds of wondering where the headache came from before I remembered what I just did and quickly brought up my status. Or at least that's what I would have did if not for the fact that there were a couple of notifications waiting for me instead. Congratulations on reaching the E grade. Note, you are in Phase 2 of a world subjugation for a pre-int world. Evolution has contributed to the activation of Phase 3. Alert, Princeling of the Abyss is a contested class. Alert, your evolution was error. Alert, error, I look forward to your growth error. Alert, it appears that I might have fucked up, like it couldn't be clearer that I have royally fucked up here. No pun intended. A contested class. The fact it was interrupted, and the goddamn message from who knows who telling me they will look forward to my growth. If that is fucking up, then I don't know what is. You know what? I'm simply going to ignore it for now and talk to my family about it later. No use in stressing myself about it right now. We can all stress together soon enough. All right, let's finally check status. Is what I wanted to do, but then I was interrupted again. It was like the system finally recovered from the errors and spat out whatever message it forgot to do. Please choose a new skill. Abyss Verdict Unbound. No one can escape the embrace of the abyss once they drift too far. Hold a single target in place and crush them under the pressure of the abyss. Considering the fact that there is only option to choose from, I don't really have much of choice in the matter. Not that I mind considering that this sounds sick as hell. Part of me is looking forward to trying it out, but at the same time, I pity whoever I use this skill on. It doesn't sound pretty. Now, before I received that new gene of mine, I probably would have had trouble trying to decide which skill to get rid of, if any at all. But now that my mana itself can naturally replicate the effects of Crushing Descent, it is far easier to get rid of it. Crushing Descent was still a good skill, and while it wasn't obsolete, I have a feeling that I could eventually get to the exact same level of control and power that the skill does at the moment. So with that being said, see you later, Crushing Descent. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors and welcome home, Abyss. Verdict. With that decision locked, I waited a few minutes in anxious silence, trying to see if the system was going to surprise me with another message of some sort. Not seeing any. Just as I was about to say status, I waited a second longer just in case, then finally called for my status. There were no interruptions this time. Oh shit. I'm going to really need some reference material soon because this is starting to feel a little overpowered op. Are these numbers normal for every E grade? They have to be right. Name, Fred Williams. Born world, Earth, ENWPI 70059. Race, human. Faction, the Williams family. Age, 17. Grade, E. Level, 51. XP, 014715. Mana, 705,705. Stat points, 0. Gene, 1 Abyssium Unbound. Traits, class. Current class, Princeling of the Abyss. Class passive, Welcome to the Depths. Class grade, NA. Class rarity, NA. Skills, 1 Aqua Barrage Unbound. 2 Ocean's Maw Unbound. 3 Abyss Verdict Unbound. Attributes, Strength 164, Dexterity 125, Vitality 138, Endurance 137, Mana 141, Willpower 112, Perception 112, Intelligence 112, 112, Cooked B2. Yep, you're cooked. Well, maybe, no, he's right, it's over for you. My cousin, dad, and uncles got their jokes off for a few minutes at my expense, before Grandpa finally cut through it with a clearly stressed voice. All right, let's start from the top. Read the description of the class again, Freddy. Nodding to my grandpa, I brought up the description of the class again, which was done simply by focusing on it while my status was up. Princeling of the Abyss. The depths are welcoming to few, but for those that call it home, they do so in a path long since paved by the God who not only made the depths his home, but his domain of power whom none can question. In the wake of his power, there are a few permitted to walk his path, chosen by the god himself. Go forth, princeling, the depths and the abyss therein wait. Class passive, welcome to the depths. The depths will treat you as one of their own. I read it all aloud again for everyone to hear, class passive included. Even though I've reread it plenty of times and read it aloud twice now for my family here, I was still shocked by what I saw before me. So it doesn't mention being contested anywhere apart from the alert you got right. Nope. Sigh, then let's not get headaches over this. Gods are real, and one of them has taken a liking to our boy Freddy. If gods are as strong as anything we've heard about it, legends, or read about in books similar to those I've made a living from writing, then we know there is nothing we can do here. Especially when this one clearly interrupted with the system to do what it did for Freddy. We don't know what type of power it takes to actually do that, but let's assume it's some divine stuff going on here. It's above our heads, and it's a bridge we'll cross as a family when it comes. For now, Freddy, you said you could get information from those religious people in the dungeon, right? Don't ask them about the class itself, but I think if they can tell you what a contested class means, it will be great. Other than that, we'll proceed with our next phase of plans soon as Freddy here comes back from getting information. As our lone E-grade, you'll spearhead a mission down south to see the state of the city there. Scout it out, and then we'll plan how to free the people there. After the talk, I made my way over to the dungeon, swinging my spear around and throwing random punches as I did so. I haven't had time to really get used to the fact all of my stats were triple digits now and was trying to warm up my body. It felt weird, like really weird. Just a light punch could be audibly heard snapping through the air, and a hard punch, or something like my spear. It sounded like a whip cracking. In fact, when I tried to swing my spear with some actual power, I could feel it bend a bit more than it should. There's a good chance I'm going to need a new spear soon. For now, though, I made my way to the dungeon and was even planning to run through the first 50 battles again, only to be immediately sent to the second waiting area. I even tried to go back to the original waiting area, but nothing happened. Confusion must have been evident on my face, because Acolyte Aranda quickly began to speak. It seems congratulations are in order, young Freddy, and also some free information. Since you are now officially of the E-grade, access to the first 50 battles have been barred from you. There are no longer a suitable challenge for someone of your tier and go against the doctrines of our church to allow such a thing. I took his words in stride since it made a lot of sense. F-grade challenges for F-grades and so on and so forth. Easily understandable. What wasn't understandable, though at least not easily, is how he knew what grade I was. Could he sense it? Did the dungeon itself tell him when it decided I was no longer allowed to do the first 50 battles and tell him? I want to know, but let's not ask more questions than I need to, since I hope the answer to my actual reason for coming here will be free. Thank you, Acolyte Aranda. That makes sense. Though while it would have been nice to get a chance run through the gauntlet once more to stretch my legs, my primary purpose coming here was to ask you a question, if that's all right. Please go ahead. My purpose is to provide assistance, young Freddy, and it brings me joy you have sought me out for it. He was a little bit too enthusiastic, but I suppose that plays in my favor. Thank you. Well, my question is simple. What is a contested class? The smile on Acolyte Aranda's face slowly went away, and for the first time since I've met the man, something akin to shock crept its way onto his face. It only stayed there for the briefest of moments before making way for one of seriousness. A look I've seen before. Damn it, did I fuck up again? Young Freddy, you do not have to confirm or deny the things I will soon speak of. I will simply speak freely. Do you understand? Don't speak, simply nod if you do. I didn't understand why this level of seriousness was necessary, but I won't question it. I nodded to show my understanding, and he began speaking again. Contested classes are no simple matter. At their core, it simply means the class itself is limited or restricted in some way, either in the number of people who are allowed to possess the class, or the requirements needed to not only obtain, but to keep the class. Sometimes those two reasons blend deeply. But there is something very important here. The system does not control which classes are contested. I will not elaborate on that fact further, but it is vital that you understand what I have just said. Trusting that you do, I will continue. From my understanding of world subjugations on pre-int worlds, unless the force conducting the subjugation is foolish enough to teach the target of their subjugation vast knowledge about the wider world, then there is usually no way for someone in your possession to learn about contested classes. Not unless you yourself have been blessed with one, or someone you know. For that I will say two things. One, if that statement is true, then I strongly advise you or that person to keep that knowledge secret as much as possible. I will not elaborate on that point further. Secondly, I will strongly advise you or that person to prioritize strength above all else. I cannot further stress how vital this is. That is all I have to say on the matter, young Freddy, and I look forward to seeing you undertake the E-grade gauntlet in due time. For now, I must apologize as I have business to tend to. He gave me a pointed look, and his smile did not return even for a second as he vanished as if he was never there. Well, shit. I really am cooked, aren't I? 113. Movements of the Church B2. It wasn't until the next night that I actually set out south with a couple of others in tow. My cousin and Uncle Mac. It was pretty silent since the whole point of this was to scout, so we're being as quiet as possible. Only talking if there was a need to, and right now, there wasn't such a need. So I allowed my mind to drift slightly on the topics, weighing everything down since I left the dungeon yesterday. Acolyte Aranda was very clear about the importance of what I was in possession of, and what my actions should be from now on. My family members already knew about it, of course, and I had no intention of telling anyone else, but now I'm sitting here wondering just what the Acolyte is going to do with the information. Especially after stressing just how important it was not to tell anyone else, when I quite literally already told him. By now I've mostly settled on the idea that he was going to tell members of his church about it, and I might get a visit in the night from religious fanatics trying to get a hold of my class any day now, but stressing about that will do me no good. Obviously, that was easier said than done because here I was still stressing about it. Sigh. I tried my best to focus instead on what was more relevant to me as we continued moving through the night towards the south. If we were driving, this would have normally been about a 30-40-ish minute drive depending on where we are going. At our current pace, though, it would likely take almost 2 hours. But that was if we stayed at our current pace. Let's pick up. I whispered to my cousin and uncle, and they both nodded. But our cautious walk turned into something of a jog, and before long almost a sprint. Well, it was almost a sprint for them both, but with the stats I had now, it would take far more than this to bring me anything close to a sprint, but this was good enough for now. After a while, we began to near the city and slowed down significantly, eventually moving at a crawl. On the way here, we passed a good amount of destruction, most of which was clearly caused by the Earth changing after being fully integrated, but we could spot some areas that clearly looked to be result of fighting. People's remains were the most obvious indicator. Trying to put that out of my mind, we slowly pushed into the city, or at least the first city in the county. There were some places, especially the further north you went, that would require to travel from town to town or city to city, with nothing in between them. And by nothing, I meant large pockets of nature and isolated buildings without an actual community around them. Broward County, FL, and the cities that called it home wasn't like that at all. Legally, all the different cities had their own defined borders, and you could see welcome to insert name for any one of them, but it all just felt like one massive city put together. Either way, we pushed on, and it didn't take very long to notice something particularly odd. It was quiet. More than that, there were no signs of anyone at all here. Not humans, not the aliens, not even stray dogs. I know it was nighttime, and perhaps people were sleeping, but this wasn't necessarily the type of time where people could just sleep without care. We also knew from the refugees that the lava folks practically butchered everyone they could, so we weren't expecting a bustling city by any means. While Freddy and the others were busy scouting, Acolyte Aranda had finally been granted the audience he requested immediately after meeting with Freddy the prior day. All the necessary greetings were exchanged, and the Acolyte began to speak. I have reason to believe that the lone individual to complete the F-grade gauntlet is in possession of a contested class. The figure the Acolyte was communicating with widened his eyes, but he did not stop the Acolyte from continuing to speak. The Acolyte then proceeded to explain the circumstances in which he learned about the information. Before explicitly detailing the words, the Acolyte himself spoke to Freddy, and every single reaction that Freddy gave to every word he said. Even if it was just the slight twitch of a finger, it was reported. From there, knowing it would be asked, Acolyte Aranda proceeded to report with excruciating detail every single interaction he had with Freddy. Nothing was missed and no stone left unturned. You have done well, Acolyte. From now on, continue to try and build a good relationship with him, but no longer should you invite him in the church, at least not until certain precautions have been taken. Understood, Deacon. And with that, the call ended, and the Acolyte went back to his duties, and this time it was the other man who went to request a meeting, one that was granted almost immediately, and before long he was seated before a woman dressed in blue religious robes that only revealed her face. The woman didn't speak, nor did she need to, as her questioning gaze was enough of a conversation starter. Bishop, I am requesting a full review of a potential entrant by the name of Fred Williams. He is a native of the planet Earth, which is currently in the middle of the pre-integration subjugation. This native is confirmed to be in the E grade, and is so far the only one to complete the full gauntlet on the planet. We have reason to believe he is in possession of a contested class. After the opening line she heard, the bishop was already preparing to deny the request for a review, and even reprimanded the man before her for even requesting such a thing. They operated under very strict safety and security protocols, and breaching them for anything less than a critical situation was strictly prohibited. Of course, learning of a potential entrant in a pre-int subjugation world of all places having a contested class was one such situation. That was no surprise, since only gods could bestow contested classes. Anything at all that involved a god was always of a critical nature, and if someone managed to grab the attention of one long enough to be granted a class in return, then it definitely required a full-scale investigation. They couldn't see his status at all, but while inside of the Gauntlet dungeon, any rewards the system gave out was influenced by the dungeon and the Church of Rejivas. It was one of the ways they ensured to always get talented individuals willing to commit to the grind to join their church. Instead of a normal person who usually got 3 simple traits from the system as an F grade, anyone going through the Gauntlet dungeon would have a much better chance of earning better traits, skills, gear, and most of all a class, when they would likely only get a chance at a new one at the E-grade evolution. So as a result of that, they were able to see those rewards given by the system, and of course all of the fights that an individual fought would be recorded and stored as well. On top of that, Freddy also got transferred to one of the Rejiva's training worlds, and fought there using all of his abilities for a significant period of time. It didn't even take an hour for the review to completed, and the bishop had a stern expression on her face. The chances he has a contested class are significantly high, and if true, then it is clearly a water pantheon class, likely from the ruler of depths, and we know what class that is and what it means. The bishop paused as she thought of the implications, and then quickly shifted to actions the church should take. Tell the acolyte to report his act, then do nothing else. The archbishop will handle it. Unlike the 2 before her, the bishop did not need to request a meeting and simply went to a private room before directly calling the archbishop in question. She didn't waste any time and quickly explained every conclusion she reached. A few moments passed in silence, and then a single instruction came through the screen. The factions of the depths will move to kill, capture, or uplift the boy, find out who is trying to uplift him, and tell them to contact the church. The boy received a great act. We will not overlook that. 114. To the Dungeons, B2. POV Fred. It was nearly dawn when we returned home. Nobody wanted to speak, this time not from trying to be cautious, but instead from the discovery that was made. The first few minutes of exploring were met with silence, but we didn't think too much of it at the time. It was odd, but not anything too abnormal. Not until we spent a few hours running all over the place, and even purposely going out of our way to make significant noise. Of course, a few hours was not enough to search every nook and cranny of the county, and there could still be people alive in some place yet. The only people we were able to find were dead ones. There were probably a couple of million people living here before the world's subjugation, and now it was a ghost town. Why wouldn't that leave a bad taste in our mouths? We couldn't believe it. We all knew that plenty of people have died. Even here in Laja, I think we had just under 100,000 people in the city before this all happened, and we were basically reduced to a couple hundred now. A good number of people ran away, but I still remember all of the bodies I saw when Grandpa and I first came back. There were many, far too many. What did that say about the rest of Earth, damn it? Would we even have enough people to advance to E-grade and push us to Phase 3? Did Earth even have 1 million people left? And then those bastards didn't even have the nerve to come back and attack us. The second we stood up to them and showed them humans were not to be fucked with, they ran like the little bitches they were. I don't think I ever in my life will hate another group of people more than I do now. I know that type of thought was probably not a good thing, but I couldn't help it. All this death, all of this pain and heartache, for what? No matter what that answer was, there was no way it was worth it. Anyway, these news wasn't taken well when we returned home, especially for the people who had friends or even family down there. Though we were now in somewhat of a weird position regarding what to do next. Obviously, getting stronger was still the #1 goal, at least for me, but that wasn't the goal for all of Laja. And well, by now, everyone that remained was either openly or unconsciously looking to our family for some level of direction. It wasn't like we could order everyone to pick up arms and go storm off to battle aliens, but humans have always been known to adapt, something we've all shown in some ways since this all began. And looking at everything objectively speaking, I think another adaptation was happening. I don't know if it was the added intelligence or the fact I've read about things like this in books before, but instead of the soft power that the governments of old held. The president, senators, mayors, or hell, even the billionaires who could make a lot of things happen all had soft power. None of them were actually strong enough on their own to do anything at all. But money or authority given to them by law gave them all the power they needed in the way things were before. We all already knew that from the day this subjugation hit us and we could gain levels, and with it power, things would never be the same. The biggest first would dictate life on Earth, and that first wouldn't be soft power anymore. It would quite literally be strongest person or group of people on Earth. Why should someone waste time trying to gather votes when they could beat up the competition? Why try to win over the populace if no one was strong enough to make a complaint that would matter? Well, I don't actually think being a dictator was a good idea for many reasons, but one of them was that it was just putting an extra target on your back. But if someone wasn't strong enough to actually claim that target, what did it matter? The answer was nothing, not in this new reality, one where the Williams family had grown quite a large first, at least here in Laja, and now that he thought about it, he was the spearhead of that first. Of course, when Grandpa made his way into E-grade, it would go back to being Grandpa's role. But for some reason, I doubt that. And I know why, too. I know for a fact my evolution was special. And unless some other god, or maybe the same one, also took notice of Grandpa, then he wouldn't be nearly as strong as I am at the moment. On another note, I wonder if that's why all my XP disappeared. I was hoping for some of it to be applied to my new class and give me some free levels in the class before I did anything else. Did the interruption from that god mess things up for me? There is it normal? I suppose I'll have to wait until Grandpa or someone else evolves for me to get a better understanding of all the changes I went through. especially regarding mana control. I've long since realized, or at least hypothesized, that the stats on my status screen don't display all of the intricacies of my body in detail. They are more like a very high-level representation of those different facets in my body. There is nowhere that explicitly states that the control over my mana went up. The natural mana pool went up, but the control I gained with it, seemingly without of a lot direct training on it, that was not showcased as plainly on my status at all. Perhaps the gamer and book reader in me could put two and two together and say, well, it was likely an increase in mana and intelligence that there increased my control in mana. To be honest, that was probably true to some extent and was very believable in books and games. But in reality, it felt a little different, as if there was something else I was missing here. Not something to dwell on too heavily at the moment since I didn't have access to a library of information. Well, I think there was one book in the faction shop that could provide some information on it if I remember correct, but while I don't remember the cost, I know nothing in that shop was cheap, so I'll need to earn some money if I wanted it. Which then bring me to my next big decision. What to do next? The Snakebite Dungeon or the Gauntlet Dungeon? I have a solid reason to believe that both of them had a subsequent E-grade level to attack next. That was more or less confirmed in the Gauntlet Dungeon, but the Snakebite Dungeon could have something else altogether. Along with that, the benefits the Snakebite Dungeon provided were not nearly as comparable to the ones gotten from the Gauntlet Dungeon. The problem there was that going to the Gauntlet Dungeon could prove to be dangerous. Who knows what Acolyte Aranda actually reported about me, and who knows what they'll decide to do. I don't plan on ignoring the dungeon for very long since the benefits it provides will likely still be better than anything I could get in the presumed E-grade portion of the Snakebite Dungeon. But for now, I'll at least see what the snakes have to offer before going back there. Maybe I'm wrong, and there's plenty of benefits waiting for me. 115. Arrogance is bad, B2. With the decision made and a quick conversation with my family to let them know where I'll be headed, I made my way over to the Snakebite Dungeon. Now, unlike the Gauntlet Dungeon, which was clearly being controlled in some way or every way, but the Snakebite Dungeon didn't have those same controls in place. I was able to reappear on floor 1 without issue, and I could once again go through the floors like I did the very first time I entered the dungeon. It was different. And honestly, if I was prone to arrogance then, it would have been very easy to let that arrogance grow into a monster of a problem right about now. The dungeon went from something that required significant effort at first, and even some serious risk to life, to nothing more than a slight exercise when I was level 50, but now it was nothing more than a stroll. I honestly did even have to lift a finger if I didn't wish. All I did was let some of my mana linger in the air as I walked forward. I didn't do anything to it, nor did I actively use it to attack any of the snakes I came across. The snakes, unfortunately, could not resist that mana no matter how much they tried, and without any fanfare, they were all crushed to death one way or another. It took slightly longer on the subsequent floors for all the snakes I faced to reach the same fate, as those snakes were a bit stronger than their counterparts on previous floors, but the result was all the same. Things only became a bit different on the last floor where that giant black snake was pinned down to the floor, but it wasn't crushed to death like all the ones before it was, at least not until I actively used my mana to squeeze down on it, and it was dead. That was interesting experience, and I had to work really hard to make sure it didn't start the growth of unbridled arrogance within me. Arrogance is bad, Freddy. Mom would kill you, Freddy. Arrogance is bad, Freddy. Mom will kill you, Freddy. I kept repeating that little mantra, which was half true and half a joke, as I repapered in the same empty space we all chose to hide in when Ladja was being attacked by the lava people. In truth, even if my parents didn't instill some good values within me, I've read enough books to know that arrogant characters not titled the main character tend to die very quickly or brutally. I didn't really plan on joining them. But while clearing all 5 floors was honestly pretty easy, It was also part of a test to see how much XP I would get. Turns out not a lot. After completing all 5 floors, I quite literally got 1,300 XP in total. That was completely shitty if I was being honest. Gone were the days that 1,000 XP would actually do something for me. But here was with an XP requirement sitting in the 6 figures. I was complaining about it, but I get it. I was of a higher grade now, and I needed the equivalent XP. I'm also sure this was a way to sorta dissuade higher grade individuals from going after those of a lower grade just for XP. It wouldn't stop it completely, but it at least made it less rewarding. Anyway, I gripped my spear tightly before progressing to the pathway that I presumed led to the E-grade part of the dungeon. There was always a chance it led to something else entirely, that I would be nowhere near prepared for, but I truly felt like this was a reasonable guess, and a risk I was willing to take in the moment. What I was met with was a hallway. The walls and ceilings of this hallway weren't processed in any way and seemed to just be part of a massive rock of some kind. Not paying it too much attention, I kept walking forward until I could see some light ahead. I was ready for a fight any one point in time, but it didn't come as I neared the exit, and what I saw next almost caught me completely off guard. Almost because I didn't have much of a predetermined expression of what I expected to see, but it was still surprising, nonetheless. The hallway ended in what was a massive open chamber with light coming from where up above. I couldn't tell if it was the sun or something else, because the ceiling was covered in massive, intertwined roots, and light only shone through certain gaps between them. That wasn't the most surprising part, that though. Instead, it was the chamber itself and what it connected to. There wasn't anything actually in the chamber, but there were 3 distinct pathways to the left, middle, and right in the chamber. The only thing I could see in clearly was the one in the middle, and what I saw was at the beginning of a rain forest. I wasn't sure how big it was, nor was I sure just what else I would find within, but I didn't immediately start walking towards any of the pathways just yet. In the middle of chamber out in front of me was a corpse. It was rotting and clearly mostly eaten, but it was a corpse. I didn't even need to be someone proficient in handling corpses to know that it wasn't some super ancient corpse and was likely fairly recent. My mind immediately went to the people who apparently chose to come down the hallway, instead of waiting in that empty area with everyone else. If this was indeed an E-grade area, then whoever that body belonged to clearly wasn't, and this was the result of that decision. Rest in peace to that person, but my mind was on something else. I could see a body here. And if I could see a body here, that would mean myself and this individual existed in the same instance of the dungeon at the moment. There were a few different things that could be translated to considered it's been weeks since this person entered Versus when I did. Perhaps the instance window for the E-grade portion was extremely long, and anyone who entered within that same window would show up in the same instance. Or in this, the option I think I'm leaning towards here, or this part of the dungeon wasn't an instance in the slightest, and was likely a perpetually existing floor that anyone could enter whenever they wanted. That theory is backed up not only by the body here, but by the fact everyone could share that space together like some sort of staging ground for the E-grade portion of the dungeon. If things were more bustling, and there were far more people willing and actually able to head into this section, then I'd try and get my family to set up a shop down here, where people could buy and sell materials or pay for other goods like weapon maintenance and stuff like that. For now, it was only me, and that's enough dawdling. Let's take a proper look around. 116. Verdict in Action B2. I didn't prance around the chamber as if it was without any danger, but I managed to successfully get a better look in all 3 pathways before making my decision. The left pathway led to what looked to be a massive underground cave. I even managed to catch the sight of one of those stone skin snake things we saw on floor 4 of this dungeon, which led me to believe that what laid beyond the path was just a massive version of that floor. I could already see what was in the middle path, so I made my way straight over to the right, and that one was a swampy, marshy environment. Also like one of the previous floors, just likely on a much larger scale. A theme that was obviously carried in the middle path as well. Now, with a better understanding of what to expect, it made my decision of which path to walk down much easier to make, and that was obviously the swamp one. The more around me, the higher my chances of survival rose. Especially now with my current skill set of abilities, making my way through the swamp shouldn't pose too much of a threat. But I didn't let that thought cloud my judgment or my wariness at all for that matter. With my mind made up, I walked in the room and realized I was actually walking down into the knee-high waters. That made sense, of course, since if it was level it would spill into the chamber. The room was truly massive. If standing here and looking out at the trees and patches of land that were spread out all over the place, I couldn't see the end of it at all. This was truly an entire biome all on its own, and I'm sure the other two rooms were likely the same. Anyway, I couldn't actually see anything moving above the water except for a few weird-looking boogs flying around. But I could feel a few different creatures quickly approaching my location with each step I took. Funnily enough, the water above and around those creatures wasn't moving at all, and I could instantly see how someone could easily be caught with their pants down if they didn't have some way of sensing the snakes in the water. Or at least I was assuming they were snakes. Who knows what else was in here? Regardless, they were swimming here far too aggressively to be considered any type of a potential friendly, and this was a dungeon, so there was no need to wait for them to attack before I did the same. I let my mana loose around me, and I instantly felt the things approaching me slow heavily, but they did not stop. Already proving the differences between them and the previous opponents on the higher floors. There were 3 of them, with 2 coming from straight ahead and another to my right. I went to the one on the right first and struck down hard with my spear, hoping to pierce the creature straight through. That's exactly what happened, but it wasn't without effort. There was significant resistance between its skin and my spear, and it started thrashing about wildly when I made contact. It took me actively holding it down with my mana to keep it in place long enough for my spear to pierce its skin properly, and then it stopped moving shortly after. Well shit, that doesn't bode well for my time down here at all. I ignored the notification that popped up after the kill and turned my attention to the other 2. This is probably as good a time as any to test out my new skill. The snakes were a bit closer now, but I never once felt truly threatened by them. My guard was still up, of course, and something could surprise me at any point, but I was in knee-deep water, feeling nourished and energized, and the snakes were heavily affected by my mana. Plus, it was only 3 of them. Who knows how many I've had to fight against at the same time during my training with the church. This isn't nearly enough to get me rattled in any way. So I raised my hand and activated my newest skill as nothing but an experiment. Abyss Verdict. I felt my mana leave my body in a rush before gathering around the snake. I aimed the skill towards, not leaving a single part of it uncovered by mana, and then unceremoniously it was just crushed. Shit. Like there was nothing left there, at least nothing that I could feel any longer. I didn't waste any time after that and quickly took care of the last one like the way I did the first, and after making sure nothing was around me, I stuck my head under the water to see what remained of the one I killed with the skill. Holy shit. There really was nothing remaining here. Now I've crushed my fair share of snakes on my own, but this was something else altogether. If what I was doing before was basically pressing down on something really hard until something in it broke and it couldn't move anymore, then this was entirely different. This was like putting something in a hydraulic press, except it didn't take its time, and instead exerted its full force all at once without any sort of preamble. I need to use it again to make sure, but I'm pretty sure it only took about 30 mana too. I don't know if it takes 30 mana period or based on whatever I was using it on, and I'll likely need a few more tests to make sure, but I'd say that was a successful experiment. Finally taking a look at my notifications, I got 36,000 XP for those 3 kills. That's the type of numbers I like to see, and I could see if I stayed in here a while longer I could probably get enough XP to level up. The thought of that excited me for all of 30 seconds before I remembered this is just to gain 1 level. Ah, this is going to be quite the grind, I see. What? About an hour later, it was time for me to leave. Mainly because my spear broke. I didn't realize it, but I think I let my guard drop a little bit after taking care of the first 3 snakes without problems. Then I went on to kill about 5 more with relative ease, until I was attacked by something that was as big as my damn spear. The water was around waist deep at that point, and I felt it coming, but my mana did barely anything to slow it down. And the thing even leaped out of the water and aimed its slimy, scaled head towards my chest, and I stabbed my spear towards it. It bit onto my spear, and I had no choice but to let it go and move away as it clamped down and literally broke the blade. It didn't have a full set of teeth and only fangs, so it basically broke it with its own gums. It dove back into the water ready to come at me again, but I quickly used Abyss Verdict, and this time about 100 mana was used to crush it into nothing. That was not a small chunk at all, and while I was quickly replenishing it just from being in the water, that wasn't something I wanted to have to do any more than I already have. So, I got my ass up of there quick as hell. I lost my spear, but that thing gave me 25k XP all by itself, which brings me up over 100k XP earned in this one trip, so not a bad haul, I guess. Only needed about 20k more and I reach level 52, but that's going to have to wait until I can get a new weapon. Hopefully, I had some axe to my name that I could use in the Gauntlet dungeon to get that scythe maybe. 117. A price paid B2. In the garden of Lord Bash. My lord. There's been a new development, my lord, one that I think you should know. Speak freely. Yes, my lord, a contested class has been granted to a native of Earth. Lord Bash paused as his gaze, which seemed to not be focusing on any one thing, turned serious. Tell me everything. The being shrouded in gray mist knew what it meant for Lord Bash to look so serious. Something happened that fell outside of his purview. It was not easy for something like that to happen. Every time it did, it was always due to the influence of gods. Something even Lord Bash could not predict. The native is one who appears to have benefited a lot from the Church of Rejivas. It was also observed that he was taken to one of their training worlds. Unfortunately, as that is the domain of Rejivas, we were not able to observe the proceedings there. Though we do know he evolved to the E-grade on Earth, and even through our distant observations, we could feel the presence of something more. Upon checking his class post-evolution, it has been determined he is now the carrier of a contested class of the Water Pantheon. The exact class has yet to be determined, but a reasonable guess links him to one of the more famous classes associated to the people of the depths. I dare not speak any more than that about that class, lest I bring the attention of that being here, my lord. Beyond that, we have reason to believe that the Church will likely spread this information to certain interested parties, though we do not know who specifically. The being shrouded in mist did not speak again after that, as Lord Bash was lost in thought. It was not his or anyone else's place to make any conjectures regarding the thoughts of Lord Bash, and he did no such thing. Just waiting. Lord Bash, on the other hand, was thinking deeply about how to proceed from here. He did not fear gods like some of his level did, but he had his own circumstances for not fearing them, and none of them needed to be brought public for a simple experiment. So after he spent some time considering all of his options, Lord Bash finally spoke again. Continue to observe and nothing else. Yes, my lord. And the being shrouded in mist disappeared. Lord Bash, meanwhile, continued to think about what was happening, and his thoughts couldn't help but drift to the descendants of Volcana. He wondered if their precious planet would still exist after this was all said and done. To incur the wrath of the depths was no small feat, and there usually wasn't anything remaining of those who managed to do such a thing. Eventually, Lord Bash allowed those thoughts to leave his mind completely, and went back to focusing on his garden. What? The Church of Rejivas was never one to delay their actions. The entire church and all of their principles was modeled after god of grinding himself, Rejivas. The word grinding was different or did not exist and would be replaced by something else across cultures and species, but it would always essentially translate to intensive effort. There were a few more details there, but that was the core of it all. Rejivas himself was nothing but a simple beast when he came into existence, but he had insatiable drive to get stronger, and when he gained sentience, that drive only exploded forth even more, and he never once took shortcuts, even if they were presented before him on a silver platter. Of course, they've been plenty of people, beasts, plants, and everything in between that had a similar mentality, but none of them did it before Rejivas. There is no word in any language that exists today in any world that is old enough to describe just how ancient Rejivas is. When it came to grinding for strength, he had no equal and hated the concept of sitting on his ass. Something the church that essentially follows him around like little ducklings follow to the utmost. Needless to say, it didn't long for a representative from a particular faction of Diptheans to be contacted, and it didn't take much after that for a very secure and somewhat clandestine meeting to be organized. All right, I'm here. You picked the worst damn time to want to meet, and I suppose that's right along the lines of what you Rejivas lovers like to do, but I'm here, so talk quickly. As much as I would like to correct you for the umpteenth time, this is not the occasion. Your entire faction and perhaps others are looking for someone right, likely a male. Flavius, a proud Dipthean and a rather strong D-grade, had come to the meeting located within one of the many floating bastions on the planet. There wasn't any real surface land to be found, but not everyone who visited the planet wanted or could dwell beneath the ocean, hence the creation of these bastions. Not quite big enough to be cities on their own, but not so small that it could be compared to a village. Regardless, it was where the meeting between the Rejivas rep and Flavius was being held, and due to that, there were many protections in place to prevent spying, not unusual for the church, especially considering where they were. Though the room that they were located in began to almost creak, as Flavius suddenly turned far more serious that he'd been on arrival. Acolyte, careful of the words you speak next. How have you come to learn of this? Again, there is no time. The church knows of the boy and we know where he is. We are willing to give you his location and no one else. In fact, we are even willing to grant you passage, but that will come with a price. Flavius did not immediately answer. In fact, before saying another word, he took out a blue bead and pressed it to his temple, and after a few moments passed, he focused on the acolyte before him. Name your price. The price is simple. In fact, it will cost you nothing. Simply continue to allow the Church of Rejivas to keep our branch here in this bastion for another decade. That is all. Flavius, who had just been given the authority to spend as much money he needed to spend for the information and passage, grit his teeth at the ask. It was already an affront to their god and their faction, to allow the church of another to have a branch on their planet, and he never understood why it was allowed in the first place. But their term for residence within the bastion was to end within the year, and their faction, as he knew, had no plans on renewing it. He also knew that he didn't need to call to know whether he should accept this term or not. Agreed, and a team is already prepared and waiting on standby. We demand passage immediately. Wonderful, but if I know you all as well as I think I do, then that team likely has at least one B grade. That will not be applicable, as the planet we are going to is limited to the E grade for the moment. 118. Church's Stance B2. POV Fred. I returned to the dungeon a bit more earlier than I planned to, and not as armed as I wanted to be. Of course, I had one of the easier-to-purchase spears with me that I used to use, but it wasn't the same as the one I had before by a long shot. Anyway, I couldn't afford any weapons from the faction shop at the moment, and I could stand around doing nothing. Plus, I didn't need weapons to use my skills if it really came down to it. When I first appeared in the familiar waiting area, I was half expecting Acolyte Aranda to attack me right then and there. He did not. "Ah, you are finally back, young Freddy. Come, there is much to discuss." He stormed towards me, and I almost instinctively took a step back, but held my ground in the end as he placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, young Freddy. In this dungeon, you are safe." And with that, I was teleported. It wasn't like the feeling I got when I entered the dungeon, nor was it anything like the one that made me drop to my knees when I went to train on whatever planet that was. It was more like I just moved really fast while standing still at the same time. Very weird to explain, and I'm also not sure why I didn't feel threatened even as the acolyte teleported me someplace else. Something akin to a small bedroom from the look of the things. The walls were the same dungeon walls as before, so this was likely someplace else in the dungeon. There was a small bed, a desk, and its accompanying chair, and that was all. There wasn't even a door to enter or exit the room. For all intents and purposes, I was trapped here. Yet I didn't feel threatened in the slightest. That was weird. I wonder if it was because I've already experienced what it means to be threatened by the acolyte. That day when he explained how serious his church took things activated all the flight or fight instincts in body unconsciously. This wasn't that. Awesome privacy at last. Now, young Freddy, there is indeed much to discuss. Firstly, I need you to understand that the church is moving in your best interest at the moment. Whether you intended to or not, you have stirred the nest of something that should never be bothered. Now, without your say-so or knowledge, there are beings mightier than you can ever imagine searching high and low for you. The church is choosing to help you amidst the chaos because you are a receiver of a great act. I want you, young Freddy, to understand that it is not of natural goodwill or an act of charity. We respect those who have received a great act even once in their lives, and that action alone is usually enough for you to receive the church's help at least once. This is that one time, young Freddy. I say all of that to say that the thing I am about to ask of you is not done so out of greed or ill will, and it is in your best interest that you answer truthfully, young Freddy. I need you to confirm just which contested class you are in possession of. I was already tense just from being in this room, and it only grew with intensity the more he spoke, till it finally reached a peak at that last line. With these news stats of mine, I was technically supposed to be far more intelligent than I was before all of this began. But I was genuinely frozen for a moment, and the words sank into my mind properly, and the digestion of them was completed. Then it hit me, far slower than it probably should have. He knew I was the one with the contested class. There was no doubt in his voice as he spoke those words, not even a single tremble of hesitation. Of course, I was always worried about that possibility, that after my seemingly innocent question and his ensuing explanation, that they would guess what I had somehow and come to kill me. That little fear hadn't left at all even as I entered the dungeon. But speculation was always just speculation, even if it was a solid guess. It would always just be a guess. Until it became truth, that is, and now having it stated clearly like this was, well, it was some shit for lack of a better word. It wasn't even hard to connect the potential dots it would have taken to figure out that I had the contested class, and that was without considering the obvious. This church was a powerful organization, and I was sure that they had people of the higher grades within. So maybe a bit too fast, or perhaps too slow depending on who you asked, I came to terms with the situation and took it for what it was. They knew I had a contested class, they wanted to help me. Perhaps they've already helped me, but now they needed to confirm just which contested class I had. No biggie, right, all in a day's work. Princeling of the Abyss. I could have tried to play for more information and just outright refused to reveal the class, but it felt like doing that would only hurt me. Especially when considering the power this organization held, they could probably torture me if they wished. Maybe that was a bit much, but I didn't have all the cards and I needed to play with the few I were dealt. The acolyte didn't respond immediately, choosing to remain silent for a moment before he took a deep breath. Young Freddy, I don't know whether to congratulate you or pray to Rejivas on your behalf. You stumbled upon something truly amazing, yet also perilous in nature. It is not my place to speak on what makes it either of those things, but what I can say is that this start of yours could have leaned on the perilous side of things if not for the church. Fortunately for you, that will not be the case. People are coming to look for you, young Freddy. Whether you like it or not, you are being searched for with intensity, and there is no denying that fact. Some of those in search of you likely do not have your best interest at heart. In fact, it might even be said that none of the people searching for you have your specific interest at heart. But there are some who truly wish to do you harm right here and now. While there are others who would much rather uplift you on some sort of pedestal if given the chance. Something else that is a fact is that all of these people will eventually find you one way or another. There is no mistaking that reality, young Freddy, you will be found. He paused to let the weight of his words sink in, and I could have gulped from the anticipation. That is where the church has decided to help you. We cannot stop these people from finding you, but we can allow the group likely to uplift you to find you first, giving them a massive head start on their competitors. They will be here soon, in exactly 4 days from today. They will enter this dungeon from outside of your world and seek you out. I cannot force you to meet them, but I would advise you to be here 4 days from now instead of having them find you on their own. Ah, and another thing, young Freddy, there is a creature that you fought and killed successfully in Battle 50. Under no circumstances are you to mention that you did that when you meet these people. It is in yours, and even the church's best interest that you don't. 119. No need to worry, B2. After explaining to me that the church had essentially sold information about me to a group that was looking for me, and I was to see it as an act of good faith, because not only would they find me regardless of the church's intervention, but so too would other groups also on the hunt for me. I really didn't know what to say or think about that. I mean, how the hell was I supposed to know what to say or think about it? People were looking for me. For me of all people, Fred Williams. And it was easy to understand that these people were looking for me from off the planet. They weren't even on Earth, and they were trying to find me for whatever reason. No, it wasn't whatever reason now, was it? The contested class, it was clearly special enough to have all of these people looking for me, and I couldn't help but think of the irony of it. I was so excited to be given a class with royal implications that I allowed the logical and safety-seeking part of my mind to gloss over the fact that anything to do with royalty of any kind always came with baggage. That wasn't a new concept in the slightest. There was always baggage. Always. The baggage could be good or bad based on real-life events across Earth's history, ancient and even recent, but it was baggage all the same. If I wanted to take it a step further, it didn't even have to be royalty in the truest sense of the word. Couldn't famous athletes, actors and actresses, musicians of all kinds, and anyone else who had a claim to fame, hell, even grandpa to a certain extent, didn't they have to be wary of the things they did or said in the public eye? How about their kids? They were swarmed with cameras from before they could even walk. And that was just pre-subjugation Earth. A place where the size of someone's fist wasn't literally in terms of power. What about now? When gods existed, and I'm sure people just below the realms of gods were present too. Where would a royal, a princeling, someone marked by a god in some way fit into that reality? Me, Fred Williams. Where would I fit in? The different possibilities feel literally endless in my mind. What if I was royalty to a kingdom or empire or something that had untold enemies, and now they were after me? Hell, what if the reason why it's contested is because other people vying for some crown? A crown I didn't ask for, nor do I actually want. Shit, man, I couldn't be more cooked if I threw myself into a pot and turned the knob to high. Finally focusing once again on Acolyte Aranda, who thankfully allowed me some time to get my thoughts in order, whatever good that was doing me. Anyway, I have a question, Acolyte Aranda. Please ask away. This room is private, young Freddy, and we can stay here for as long you need. I smiled to show I appreciated the words before asking my question. The church clearly values great acts, and I got one. But I don't want to say what I accomplished to earn it was simple or easy. But can't anyone do that and receive great acts? Wouldn't the church be owing a lot of one-time favors if I understood your explanation properly? He smiled at me with that weird smile of his before answering my question. It is not that simple, young Freddy. There are a few things to consider here. Firstly, that thing you killed for Battle 50. That was no simple beast, and the number of F-grades who have killed one of them are not as many as you might think for whatever reason. Actually, those beasts aren't killed very often at all, if to be quite honest with you. This dungeon is a bit special, as you can surely tell by now, but let's get back on topic. What you've done is only one part of it. What you've done in relation to everything else you've ever done in your life is what really matters. There are people out there who could wipe out entire countries, continents, and even more with a wave of their hand. For them, going through battles 150 couldn't even be counted as any sort of exercise, let alone an act. They are presented against you and your accomplishments prior. For example, young Freddy, for you to receive another great act, you would need to do something or a string of things far more impressive than your previous feats. And the more and more you accomplish, the harder and harder it is to receive acts at all, let alone great ones. So to answer your question, no, the church does not owe a whole bunch of people one-time favors. He chuckled after that, clearly finding the thought of it all a little funny. But his explanation made sense in a way, and even I knew that the Leviathan wasn't something simple. The description of my skill was more than enough to confirm his words, not to mention the fact it looked dope as shit. What about the subjugation, then? Are the people trying to get to Earth going to be all right with some other, aliens or something coming to the planet to meet me? That doesn't seem like the type of thing they would be happy about. Acolyte Aranda looked at me the way someone would look at an innocent child, saying something they clearly didn't understand. It was kind of annoying. Ah, young Freddy, I can't speak for those aliens as you described them, and what they may or may not do. But what I can say, or at the very least guess, is that I don't think you will have to worry about the subjugation for too much longer. The conversation with Acolyte Aranda didn't continue for much longer than that. The only other thing we discussed was getting a weapon and, well, matching with the explanation he gave. I didn't even have a small act to my name, so I couldn't get anything. It was dark when I exited the dungeon, and there wasn't any yelling, sounds of fighting, or smoke rising in the distance. So I took my time walking back, various thoughts swirling around my mind. Based on everything I heard, there was only one thing that my mind kept going back to. Is this what it was like to be the main character? I think I was checking all the MC boxes by now. There was a big bad guy trying to kill me and all my friends and family. We all got systems and the levels and skills it came with. I've gone through some trauma with losing some family members. Now I just got a power-up, but it comes with strings attached, and a whole god is paying attention to me. If that isn't the life of a typical LitRPG MC, then I don't know what was. Hehe. Not letting that thought go any further than that of a joke, I made my way home, and it was late, I think, so I didn't really expect anyone to be up waiting for me, but Grandpa was there. Of course he was. Why do you look all ponderous? You're too young for all that. Yeah, you're right. I gotta stop stressing so much, or I'll look like you when I'm older. Ha, you'd be lucky if you could look like me at any point in your life. We laughed a bit, then since he probably wouldn't let me walk away until I told him what was on my mind, I went into a long spiel about everything Acolyte Aranda told me, without leaving anything out. By the time I was done, Grandpa hadn't said a word the entire time, and his brows were deeply furrowed as he thought long and hard about everything I said. Freddy, you know there's a good chance they'll want to take you away, right? Honestly, I hadn't really considered that option, but yeah, that makes sense. If this is as serious as it seems, then they'll probably be coming here to pick me up and bring me back to whatever entity I was a princeling of. Grandpa clearly didn't need me to answer, and instead put his lone hand on my shoulder. 4 days, right? All right, I'll be back. Watch the house for me in the meantime. He then got up and walked off with determined steps, but I called after him. Where you going? To protect my family. 120. Parents' Duty B2. Sigh. I wish I could just be sighing because Raycon was getting his jokes off. But he didn't spend much time doing that and instead had less humorous news to give me. Dad, Uncle Mac, Uncle Robert, Uncle Lenny, and maybe it would have been all right if it stopped there. But no, my mother, Aunt Risha, Aunt Abigail, and finally Aunt Kimberly all decided together to do the exact same thing. The only who apparently hadn't gone through with their plan was Aunt Renee. And well, she didn't really want to fight at all these days, and it was understandable considering she is till grieving her husband. Plus someone had to watch the other kids. But everyone else were all crazy people. Why the hell did they all decide to forcefully integrate their traits like Grandpa did? Not only it was risky and carried the chance of being crippled permanently or even worse death, but their futures would forever be to remain second fiddle compared to the people who didn't do that. Like, why in the hell would they do that? Did Grandpa tell them not to do that? That he would be the only one needing to hinder his own future for the sake of our safety in the present? I sigh. I suppose the only good thing about this was the fact that Raycon himself didn't have any plans to do the same, and even if he did, everyone else had apparently drilled into his mind that he wouldn't be allowed to even for a second. So here we were, still sitting on the sand, while all the adults basically killed themselves in search of strength. Sighed, I'm sighing a lot lately. Hey, did you know you sigh a lot these days? It's like you're going through a midlife crisis. We are going through a midlife crisis, perhaps the worst midlife crisis of all time. You might be right. Did you know we pay people to scout? I think you're the only one who didn't know that we paid people to scout. In fact, we pay people to do a lot of things. You've been out of the loop ever since you became Tommy Tough Knuckles. Shit, really? What else are we paying people for? Okay, I exaggerated a little bit, but we are sponsoring parties to get materials for us. Paying people to help with clearing rubble out, to make and grow food. That's pretty much it. Damn, I didn't realize we were paying that many people to do stuff. Is there a reason why? I get scouting, but we can clear our own rubble out and we don't need food, and all the materials, don't we get enough on all our own dungeon runs? Yeah, I said the same shit, but it's Aunt Abigail's idea. She said it's to create a flowing economy and give people something to work towards. Most people aren't crazy like us and continuously risk their livers all day, you know. At the start, people had no choice but to attack and were even trying to fight back. Then reality hit, and we all lost people. People were ready to give up from what I've heard. Then the big, bad Williams family swooped in to save the day. We've provided aid, jobs of some sort, and protection. Now a good number of the folks here don't want to enter dungeons anymore, and well, I can't blame them too much. One mistake and it's over, cuzzo, we don't get any respawns. As easy as it is for us to clear all 5 floors of the Snakebite dungeon, we could still die in there. Not everyone wants to deal with that pressure. When did you get so sentimental? Getting a cold. Same day you got a new girlfriend, apparently. Your mother is going to love to hear all about it. You wouldn't. Instead of responding, Raycon just looked at me and smiled. He would, of course he would. It wasn't like Mom would be mad or anything. It was the opposite, actually. She would be overly excited, and I would have to hear about it for a while, and no amount of denial about having a GF would deter her. Anyway, Raycon and I stayed on the beach till the sun set pretty much. It was peaceful and somewhat needed, actually. We just chatted for hours. Some of it about family, some about random stuff, and a good amount of it on our classes and futures. Raycon had the whole shadow assassin thing going on, and he liked the shadow part of it, but he wasn't so hip on being an assassin. Which I understood to a point. Yeah, it had good features, and he was really dangerous at single-target fighting, but he would burn out quickly against large numbers. Not really ideal, but at the same time being a sneaky one-hit kill type of fighter was dope too. I think he just didn't like the assassin tag, not that any of us are calling him that. For me, on the other hand, I had no idea what my future held, and making any plans about my future classes just felt silly considering I didn't know where life would take me in just a few days. But we eventually went back home, And I was prepared to apologize to my family, since even if I was a million times stronger than all of them, which I wasn't, that didn't mean disrespect was okay. These were the people who raised me, and having manners towards my elders, especially ones who clearly deserved my manners and respect, was a lesson I hadn't forgotten. Here's the thing, though, I didn't get to do that at all. Not a single one of them cared, and in fact, it was parents who apologized to me. Son, I understand how you feel, trust me, but for all of your amazing qualities and everything you've experienced that we haven't, you are not a parent. You don't understand the sacrifices parents are willing to make to ensure their children have even a slightly better future. If going through that painful process gives you even a single additional measure of safety, when whoever is looking for you comes calling, then your mother and I will go through that pain 10 times over and then some. That is our duty as parents, so we want to apologize about how heated things got earlier and to let you know that you are loved and to let your parents be your parents. You go out there and be a superstar and we'll make sure you always have a home to come back to. Deal. I suppose that's a good enough deal. Zhao. And I supposed I just smacked you in the back of your head. Don't get too big for your britches, young man. I saw that one coming, of course, and Mom barely touched me. Either way, that was that, and we were good. I had to let them be parents as Dad put it, and I can't really argue with that. So what genes did you guys get? Let me check. It's called farspine. It should apparently allow for my tendons, muscle tissue, nerves, and even my eyesight to be synced, and it shows its capabilities the best when aiming something that I need to pull like a bow. Well, mine suits me just fine, actually. It's called Iron Pulse, and while the whole sword fighting thing is okay, I would much rather fight with my hands, and this is going to let me do that. It basically rebuilds my entire muscle system to be thicker and shock absorbent, all without massive bulk. I can hit harder and take less blunt damage. Oh, those were surprisingly decent genes. I guess there's no such thing as bad genes, just ones that are better than others maybe. Even Grandpa got a good gene. Well, I'm just glad they're okay. Now we only have Grandpa to worry about. 121, Air B2. Without Grandpa returning, the days passed, and it was time to go back into the dungeon. I talked it over in detail with the members of my family, and it was agreed that I should meet them in the dungeon. Although I'd be by myself, we came to the final point that it would be better to start things off in the best way possible. If Acolyte Aranda is telling the truth, and I think he is, then those people won't just show up in the dungeon, realize I'm not there, and just leave. They will come to find me, and perhaps that's the type of start that causes any further discussions to be much harder. So if we want to be treated well, we'll at least extend the same courtesy on our own side first. Of course, my family would all be standing just outside the dungeon waiting in case things go wrong. There was a chance they would be able to stop me from teleporting out of the dungeon, but that was a risk I was willing to take. 1 second I was standing outside, then the other I was standing in a familiar waiting area, and Acolyte Aranda was once again greeting me with that weird smile of his. Welcome back, young Freddy. I am so glad you chose to come. While I'm not at liberty to say many things, I do think this meeting will go a bit better than you think. Well, I hope so. Anyway, where are they? Am I early? He somehow smiled a level deeper before responding. They are already here. In fact, they have been here for a while, but it will take a few more moments to, let's say, get accustomed to this world of yours. Don't worry, they will appear before you shortly. We kinda just looked at each other in silent awkwardness for a few moments after that. Well, it was awkward for me. I wouldn't be surprised if the Acolyte was completely fine with it. Either way, the moments passed and the Acolyte spoke again, and his smile, for whatever reason, got smaller. It seems they are here. That was all he said, and seemingly out of nowhere, 3 people appeared in front of me. Holy shit. I was kind of expecting to see humans, or at least people that looked mostly human like Acolyte Aranda there, but these were not even close to that. Humanoid for sure, yes, but definitely not human. Dark blue skin, that even from here I could tell was harder than any type of armor I had access to, and the rippling muscles underneath didn't seem to be losing out as well. They were all tall, somewhere between 6 and 7 feet. It was kind of hard to tell. All of them wore the exact same clothing, black leather armor of some kind above dark blue, skin-tight garments. 2 women and 1 man. Thankfully, that was easy enough to tell, at least if I was using Earth's humans as a reference. They were a different race altogether, so it could all be wrong. Then one of them stepped forward, one of the presumed women. She had a very neat bun of pitch-black hair, and even before she said a single word, she looked to be a serious individual. She then closed her eyes and bowed her head slightly before straightening and looking towards me. "Greetings to the princeling. My name is Ascendant, and I am the captain of your guard detail from this moment until we return to Delarshua. I am sure you have questions, but let us save them, as the time we have in this dungeon of the church is limited." There was obviously a lot to unpack there. She called me princeling. Suppose I should have seen that one coming, a guard detail. I guess that makes sense if a princeling is actually someone important. But how important? Can I order them around? Do I want to order them around? Then the part that matters the most returned to Delarshua. It was what we were worried about. They want me to come back with them to some place. Well, I don't think that is going to go down all that well. Before I got a chance to respond, Acolyte Aranda made a somewhat low sound of surprise before another individual popped up in the room with us. "Grandpa." The one-armed old man who happened to be my grandfather looked confused for all of 10 seconds before he furrowed his brows and made his over to stand right next to me. "So y'all are the ones trying to take my grandson, eh?" The balls on this man never fails to surprise me. No beating around the bush at all, just straight out with it. Acolyte Aranda was the one to respond to him, though. "Time is running out. I suggest you all leave now." "Wait, what?" "Princeling, we must leave now." The same lady in the front spoke again and stepped towards me, but Grandpa stepped in front and the blue lady halted, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "Grandpa, she is supposedly my guard captain or something. Let's hear them out first and go from there." I placed a hand on Grandpa's shoulder and then looked towards the lady that I had no doubt was stronger than me. "You seemed rushed. Why can't you just leave on your own? Do you need something from me?" "Princeling, we are not natives of this world and face a few restrictions. To leave, we need to be in contact with you. There is no more time, gather." The lady appeared next to me, and the other 2 who had been silent this whole time arrived at my side as well, and all 3 placed a hand on me. "Exit now." "Fuck it." I left right away, and quickly found myself surrounded by my family, Grandpa who left when I did, and 3 blue aliens calling me princeling. "Wonderful." What? After the Mexican standoff situation happened and was successfully diffused, we were all able to make our way back home in a tense sort of silence. Of course, this only happened after Asania made it very clear she wasn't here to kidnap me like some lost princess. Anyway, I was seated in a room with just Asania at the moment. She requested a private talk, and well, that took an additional bout of convincing, but I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt again. I had too many questions I wanted to ask, and if this is how she wanted to play it, then I could do a little give and take. Of course, Grandpa and the others were just outside if shit hit the fan. "Thank you for meeting me, princeling. I am aware that you and your family are dealing with tense times, so I know how this must look without context." "Yeah, it isn't the best time." She nodded at me. "Again, I am sure you have many questions, and there will be plenty of time to answer them. But for now, allow me to explain a few things, and perhaps your answers will be among them." This time it was my turn to nod back. "Then let's get straight to the point, princeling, for that is what you are, a princeling of the abyss, and it is a class with only one purpose." She paused, and her face grew serious, and even the air around her felt different all of a sudden. "It is to become the heir to the god of the depths." 122. Grade Lift B2. An heir to a god? There's no way. That doesn't make sense one bit. She gave me a tight smile before responding. No, princeling, it does not make sense at all. I wanted to say more, but she held up her hand to stop me from speaking, and it was only then that I remembered she had asked me to wait until she was done. The whole air thing really caught me off guard, though, so I can't be blamed for interrupting like that. Anyway, I held my tongue and paid attention to everything she said. I'm not sure about the extent of your knowledge regarding contested classes, but it is important to understand that they are not made organically by the system. They are instead created by gods, and each one is very different and serves their own purpose. For you, the contested class you are in possession of is unique in its own way, and it comes with its own rules. For instance, there is only condition to get the class. The god of the depths wills it or he doesn't. That is it. The class also cannot be taken from you, unlike other contested classes which can be claimed upon death. Though while it cannot be taken, in that same vein you cannot give it up no matter how hard you try or wish to. This also includes climbing the grades. Unless certain goals are met, you will not be able to get a new class upon advancement to the next grade. I don't like the sound of that all. It's crazy how quickly this class went from a good thing to sounding like I gained a chain around my neck. Now the reason for why this doesn't make sense is because this class has always been given to someone among my race, the same race as the god of the depths. There is no precedent of it having been given to someone else. Even now, there are 4 other princelings among my people. Now you are here as the 5th princeling, but the first not among my people. This has not gone down well among some of the more important voices. That is the reason for my presence here. All princelings are to be respected and treated with the dignity of someone chosen by our God, but some among us have decided to take the route of cowardice to eliminate any competition. That includes you, and I, along with my companions, are your chosen guard while you are on this world. Upon arriving on a world with a higher grade limit, so too would the level of your guards be raised alongside that limit. There are still far more things to discuss, of course, but you will learn those with time. For now, I've given you a base amount of context to understand your current situation and the reason that we have sought you out. Now I will explain a few things about what comes next. One way or another, you will have to return with us to our world at some point. The things you have to do to progress through journey of becoming the heir of the god of the depths can only be done on our world. Do not worry, since you will not have to abandon your world to do so. But that is something for the future. In the short term, we know this planet of yours is in the middle of a world subjugation. You will not be able to leave while that is in progress. At least not without abandoning this world and losing your status as a native. Which means it needs to end, and this world will officially gain status as an officially integrated world. There are a few different ways to clear a world subjugation, the structured way of progressing through all the phases, and then defeating the progenitor of the planet attacking you at the end of the last phase. That will take significant time, especially for a preant world. Next is someone on this planet becoming a progenitor themselves, which would give them the right to break the connection between worlds, but that would have its own costs. Finally, an outside party can visit the world who triggered the subjugation and kill their progenitor. That will count as this world passing its subjugation and officially become integrated. We already know who is behind this, and it is only a matter of time before we find them, so this is no longer something for you to worry about. In the meantime, you need to be trained and educated properly before leaving this world, and that is part of the reason I am here. I suppose that is now enough for now, and again, there is far more to learn and discuss, but please feel free to ask any pressing questions you may have. Any pressing? This lady just dropped bomb after bomb after bomb, and now she wants me to ask her just the pressing questions. Well, there are a whole of different things I could ask about, but the most pressing right now. Why me? None of what you said explains why your God chose me and damn near broke the system trying to talk to me. Why me? A human, especially one is still so new to whole multiverse and system thing. He spoke to you. Her eyes widened slightly for just a few seconds before returning to her normal look. But I don't get why that would be such a shock. If there are 4 other princelings, then would they have gotten the same message I did? The whole looking forward to my growth thing. Yeah, he did. Said he was looking forward to my growth. Describe it in detail, please. Now she was being a little eager, but I saw no reason not to, and told her everything that happened from the time I began the evolution to E-grade versus to how the class came to be, and all the messages I got after it was over. By the time I was gone, I feel like I could almost sense the acceptance and regret in her feelings before it all vanished. Thank you, Princeling, and please forgive me for my rudeness. It is just my faction has not been spoken to by our god in a very long time. Wait, your faction, not your people. Yes, it is a bit complicated, but there are 3 different factions on my world. The other 2 factions are home to the other princelings. It is through them that the god speaks, and that is if he speaks at all. Oh, that sounds like even more bad news for me. It almost sounds like I'm on the fast track to becoming something akin to bird in a pretty cage for this faction. Protect me and give me nice things, but as long as I tell them whatever their god says, and who knows what else. Don't think I like the sound of that at all, but do I even have a choice? Attention, attention, attention. Phase 3, grade lift has been activated. Be wary. Alert, all E-grades are to gather at the nearest gate. Time until gate open, 06-23-59-59. Well shit. What is it, Princeling? You can't see this. Native-only alerts are visible only to natives. Ah, that's something else I need to ask about, especially considering what she said in the dungeon. Anyway, I explained to her what happened, and she grimaced. That is not good. 123, not enough B2. As always, life has a way of throwing out any plans you've made, and reminding you that any semblance of control you may have only goes so far. That's something I've been reminded of on more than one occasion over the last couple of months. One second, I was here being told what my future as a princeling would be like, and the next L was leading all the adults of my family over to what looks to be somewhere far to the north. I wasn't sure exactly how far north, but it definitely wasn't close by. Things were pretty tense at the moment, but they couldn't be compared to the intensity of the situation when the notification appeared. First of all, people in the family freaked out a bit, 'cause we all thought we would suddenly be attacked by a bunch of E-grade lava people. That didn't happen, of course, and instead we were just urged towards one of these gates. I haven't seen the gate yet, but just one look outside was enough to see the giant beam of white light reaching into the heavens above us. It didn't take a genius to figure out that was the location of the gate. At least the one closest to us. From where we were, we could see 2. One to the far south and one to the north. South of Florida was gonna be a bit of a trip, especially since we could barely see it, so it was an easy decision to go north. With that being said, the situation obviously wasn't so black and white. For one, there was a whole bunch of discussion going on between not just my family and I, but with my brand new guard captain, who actually refused to stop calling me Princeling. Once the shock of the notification wore off a bit, and the fact she was here and well real, I asked her to call me Fred or Freddy, and she refused. That interaction alone helped me to realize something important. She and the others will respect my wishes to a certain extent, but they are not subservient to me in no way, shape, or form. They will not be protecting my family for me in case something went wrong and will prioritize my safety in all situations. In fact, based on the talks I had with Ascendant after the notification came, if it was up to her, I simply wouldn't be allowed to leave Earth without them, and they would 100% not be able to participate in this event. It was then that I learned a few different things about the system. For one, the system had rules. Rules that the system itself followed without fail, and others it enforced with sometimes fatal certainty. A non-native participating in what is basically a system-sponsored and sanctioned event like the Phase 3 gate conquest of a world subjugation. Without a doubt it was breaking a rule, and it would be treated accordingly. Beyond that, I learned that the system wasn't a police officer of the universe. It wasn't going around looking for rule breakers and constantly trying punish offenders. What you didn't want to do was break one of its apparently completely avoidable rules during something like this. The gate conquest thing, we would be getting more information at the gate later, but Ascendant gave some base information. The gate would lead to the world of the lava people, where we will be given an opportunity to play the role of the subjugators, if you will. And this is why Ascendant said this would be bad. Phase 4 does not need to happen. It was quite simple, really. We need to prove to the system that we can stand up to our subjugators and not get eliminated. And as long even one gate stays in our control at the end of Phase 3, it will immediately begin Phase 4 and lock the subjugators from being able to reach our planet for a period of 100 years. That period is the system rewarding us with a period of growth, and after which the progenitor of the subjugating planet will personally be allowed to come to ours, and that will be our final test. Ascendant nor anyone from her faction will be able to assist me in holding the gate or keeping me alive, which meant I could die there, and any hope or expectations they had of me will be washed away just like that, without even the slightest ability to do anything about it. Obviously, I passed all of this information over to the family as well, and let's just say that sparked a whole host of new debates and eventually simply got tired of it. There was way too much talking going on, and for the first time in a long time, Grandpa wasn't taking charge of everything. I think it's because he learned what my parents, uncles, and aunts did and felt some emotions towards that. But after a while, I couldn't take it any more, and well, I said fuck it and took charge on my own. I didn't have to raise my voice at anyone. All I did was to carefully allow my mana to leak in the room, and people had no choice but to shut up because they were too busy trying to deal with the increase in pressure weighing down on them. Then I kind of just spoke from the heart. The goal is simple. All of you who are now eligible for the E grade should evolve now, and once that is done, we will make our way to the gate and then we will hold it. Those who aren't eligible will remain here and hold down the fort till we come back. There's nothing else to talk about, guys. Nothing at all. Of course, I didn't plan on hurting my family, so I took the mana back, and well, some awkward silence followed, but here we are. Traveling as one big happy family to a gate as a bunch of E-grades. Makes you wonder just how many groups on Earth right this second had as many E-grades as we did. Maybe quite a few considering we only contributed one person, me, to the start of Phase 3. Either way, there was quite a few of us, and although they apparently took a lesser path to E-grade, they were all still firmly with the grade, and the speed we moved across the land was kind of insane. There was no reason to walk and risk being late, so we were beating feet the whole way there. And that has given me plenty of time to think about quite a few things. No one in my family got more than 50 points in any given stat as part of their evolution. It was a lot regardless, but it wasn't comparable to the number of points I walked away with. Could it be because of their forceful trait integration and fusing process? It was hard to say otherwise at this point, but I would need to see Raycon evolve to be sure. Then came the two things Ascendant gave me. One was a small black ball with a white dot in the center, and it was going to be a little camera following me around. She said it would be helpful to her so she could understand where I was as a fighter and what my training will be focused on. Then came the beacon. It was dark blue and cylindrical. For that, all I had to do was place it on the ground, and the faction Ascendant hailed from would take care of the rest. They wouldn't be doing anything during the phase, but the second we return home, it's going to be some bad days ahead for the lava people. Sigh. So many different things happening, so much more that still hasn't happened, and many things that we've already forgotten. To think my life would ever get this complicated. Anyway, I wonder just how many lava people they will send to their deaths in an effort to kill me and my family. Not enough, I bet. 124. Consequence B3. My lord, we have prepared accordingly at all gate locations. We will hold nothing back. The envoy. "No, my lord, we have reached out numerous times, yet we have received no reply." The already sweltering heat in the room somehow magnified after that sentence. "Continue seeking an audience, and I will be monitoring the gates. There will be consequences if they aren't handled properly." "Yes, my lord." The vicar was soon left to his lonesome as the elder who conducted the report. The D grade. For all intents and purposes, it was truly a powerful level. E grades and below simply could not compare to the power one held when they crossed the gap into D. Reaching E grade is possible for most, but to reach beyond that, even if it was a single step more, it was nearly impossible for a vast majority of existence. The chasm that existed between each grades truly began to manifest itself properly at this point in the climb for power. It was a respected grade. In fact, one would be hard-pressed to find someone who thought anything but among the citizens of Vika. They respected and feared their vicar with their entire being, and thinking he was anything less than powerful did not even cross their minds. But what of the vicar himself? A man who was extremely versed with the power structures of the multiverse. Vika was integrated long before he was born, and for as long as he could remember it had always been unified under one central power. On a planet like that, the opportunities for massive wars to happen locally were next to none. That meant the only ways to earn experience points would be in dungeons, against wildlife, and off-planet. There would be no fast track to power in such an environment unless one created it themselves, and that is why the younger generation of elites like the Crimson are sent off-world to conduct various missions. Growth in the local dungeons of Vika will only spur so much growth, especially when they have had years to come up with various tactics and ways to successfully clear a dungeon. They were more so for the run-of-the-mill soldiers and those who pay to access them. True growth would only happen in intense situations. Ones like the people of Earth were being put through at this very moment. But such growth did not necessarily apply to that of a progenitor. They rose and fell with that of their world, and Vika, which after so many years was still a D-grade world, the vicar was limited to that level as well. Of course, he had the option that all progenitors did, and that was to forcefully raise the grade cap of his world under his own power. It was a route that was just as looked down upon as it was respected. The amount of power, good fortune, and will required to do that even once could never be underestimated, especially when the price of failure was death. It was why most in that position would rather seek to subjugate another world instead. Starting a war between worlds was often seen a better alternative to forcefully raising the grade cap. Yet world subjugation wasn't an easy thing to not only seek out, but to also accomplish. The price the system demanded was often far more exuberant than what could afford just to begin a subjugation. Then once the pain of the cost was stomached, the subjugators would then have to face an entire world of enemies ready to fight to the bitter end, because they simply had no choice but to do so. As much as the vicar wanted to do that, the risk never truly outweighed the reward enough for him to risk such a venture. That was until he met an envoy of Lord Bash. He had no idea if the envoy was a male or a female, or even how they looked as they were always shrouded in heavy gray mist. But it was through that envoy that the vicar finally saw a worthy risk. Earth. A world with D-grade potential, and that was just current. A few hundred or perhaps 1,000 years more, and it likely would have been raised a few grades higher. It was a world of humans after all. Of course, it was not to be as all the momentum they were building as a world immediately got halted as they were suddenly faced with a world subjugation. A pre-integration one at that. Something that shouldn't have happened under normal circumstances. While the system doesn't explicitly hide pre-int worlds, it without a doubt does not make it easy to find their locations, and to subjugate one on top of that. That was a costly venture. One the vicar deemed was worth it. Fighting a war against a world of people that were fully integrated versus one that didn't know something like mana existed. The choice was obvious, and the vicar felt that as a C-grade powerhouse, he would be more than capable of making up whatever loss he took due to the cost paid. He knew it was a world of humans, and was more than aware of the reputations humans held on the big stage known as the multiverse. But this was different, humans yes, but here on Earth in a pre-int world, they should have been nothing more than barbarians. They were not. There was a lot of success initially, and as predicted by the Vicar, this entire subjugation should have been wrapped up long before Phase 3 came into the picture. Then humans began to show why they were far more feared than they were respected or otherwise. To make it matters worse, although he could crush the people of Earth without even needing to call it an effort, the system would soon see him destroyed than to allow him to interrupt the process before the proper phase. Not because of his grade per se, but because of his role as a progenitor. Which is why the gates will be handled by his people, and not by his own hand. Something that gave him far more stress and worry than he would ever allow to be seen and known by others. The writing was on the wall, of course. He knew it more than he ever knew anything else, that if the humans were granted 100 years of protection by the system to grow, then it would be the same as signing his own death certificate. In general, someone reaching the D-grade 100 years after being integrated would be seen as something as a somewhat talented individual. Not a genius by any means, but not necessarily average either. But these were humans, ones who have tasted blood, tasted war, lost numbers people due to his own actions, and were backed into a wall with nowhere to go but forward. All the things that usually spurred humans on to reach great heights, all of them, were met in spades. 100 years. He wouldn't be surprised if there was a C-grade calling the shots in that world by the time a lone century passed. It had to be now. The gates were to be their final stand. Kill them all now and all would be worth it, anything less. Then death would slowly creep into their lives like slow descent of the sun, as the day dissolves into night. 125. Gardens and Burgers B3. Things are never black and white when it comes to making assumptions and conclusions that encompassed billions or even trillions of lives. But with so many beings to judge, there were certain trends to notice and loose rules that could be trusted in a general sense. At the peak of any given grade, an individual could on average exhibit a certain level of destruction and power. For the F grade, at the peak of their grade on average, they should be able to cause serious damage to a small building. For the E grade, the same was true but for multiple buildings, perhaps an entire block or so. Things flew upward rapidly from here. A D grade was an existence who could generally wipe cities from the surface of the planet at their full power. It was why people like the Vicar were truly feared by his people, but even that was only scratching the surface of power one could have. At the C grade, not only could they survive in space under their own power, but countries could disappear under the anger of a peak C grade existence. To speak of B grades at that point was to understand that a full-powered strike from the average B grade existence could not only destroy continents, but permanently carve new lines into a planet. The level of power even weak A grades could exhibit put entire planets at risk. They weren't necessarily strong enough to destroy a planet with the swipe of a hand, but with amount of damage, they can output the planet would be on a slow path to ruin regardless. There wasn't any need to discuss what happened above the A grade. The level of power there wasn't something truly measurable since the same limits for grades, and below did not exist for those above. The limit, or wall, was constantly being knocked down and rebuilt. But that was of no consequence to Lord Bash at the moment. Lord Bash did not report to anyone and did not usually have to deal with taking a step back on the account of others. Not since he climbed to the peak of the A grade, not since he ensured his name would induce fear across many different worlds. And for the first time in who knows how long, Lord Bash was paid a visit by someone uninvited to his garden. It was a woman, firmly within the B grade, and while that wasn't a power that Lord Bash feared, the faction behind her was another story altogether. The Water Pantheon. One of the strongest gods in existence called that pantheon home, and as comforting water could be to someone in a famine, she was not known for her mercy. The legend of her wrath was firmly ingrained in even Lord Bash's ears. Lord Bash had no problem acknowledging the existence of a bigger sky. What caught his attention were the exact words of his uninvited guest. Cease all dealings with the world known as Vika. That was it. Lord Bash found that comment interesting not because of the order itself, but because the guest of the water faction did not mention Earth. Of course, he knew very well, this order confirmed the fact that someone with a contested class of the water faction appeared on Earth. But why not restrict Lord Bash from interfering with Earth as well? He did not need to guess what would be happening on Vika, nor did he care about the fact his experiment went beyond any form of his own predictive ability. Gods and all things related to it could never be predicted by anything less than divinity. What Lord Bash found curious was if they cared so much about the owner of the contested class, why not restrict access to Earth as well? That could mean many different things, and Lord Bash found it all fascinating. So fascinating that he decided to leave his garden. For the first time in centuries, the Gardener of Dread was on the move again. While things far above Fred's understanding were in motion all because he got the attention of a god, he was busy observing the other people that had gathered at the gate with them. POV Fred. I didn't think we would be the only ones to show up at the gate, so I was looking forward to seeing just who else reached the E-grade along with my family. For now, there are 2 people here and they regarded us with both wariness and goodwill, and I can understand that. We were gathering here to fight a common enemy, but that didn't mean we would suddenly become the best of friends. They were both women, one held a spear while the other had a longsword on her hip. Both of them were both dressed in green armor. Not quite green metal, but clearly made out of something that was beyond simple leather armor. Because they wore the exact same set, I'm willing to bet they got it out of a dungeon. That's dope, we got materials and a few items from the Snakebite dungeon, but it wasn't really anything fit for a E-grade. And getting a full armor set from the Gauntlet dungeon would only benefit one person, and that would be if they gave up the other rewards. Anyway, while they wore a similar set of armor, they didn't look anything alike. One was tall, about 63 maybe. She had the build of an athlete, or perhaps I should say warrior now, and she was white, with her blonde hair in a long ponytail. She was also the one with the spear. Maybe she was a volleyball or basketball player. The other one, though, was a bit shorter than her partner, but not quite short in the truest sense of the word. Probably around 510, but she was black, and her hair was in a puffy afro. I'd guess they were both athletes on the same team at a college when all this happened. But they could also just be 2 very athletic women who were clearly strong to hold their own and even advance to the E-grade. Not to be underestimated in the slightest. Of course, in the same way I was observing them, I'm sure they were doing the same to us, and a few cautious seconds passed before anyone said anything. It was easy to guess who would talk first, though. Hi there, my name is Lance, and I'm here with my family to help defend our world. If possible, I'd like to work out a plan so we can all fight together without issue. The women looked at each other for a moment, nodded, then the taller one spoke up. Nice to meet you, Lance and family. My name is Haley, and I think we're on the same page here. But why do you sound so sure that we're all gonna be fighting? The message we got only said we had to gather at the gate. Due to some special circumstances, we got a bit more information than what was put out. Both women looked a little skeptical, but Grandpa wasn't shot down, and eventually we agreed to go to one of the nearby buildings. There were plenty of them here, of course. The gate was smack in the middle of a destroyed city, Nashville, to be specific. It was a truly massive thing. Gigantic pair of double doors that were pearly white in color, and it couldn't be missed or ignored even if you wanted to. That was the gate, and it took us 3 full days to get here. We weren't the only ones by the city by any means, but the area around the gate was pretty much empty when we got here except for the 2 ladies in green armor. Anyway, we all wandered over to mostly find fast food spot to have our conversation, and I really wished I could have ordered a burger right about now.